Here we are. Here we go. Here we go. Episode 10, CornStars. How's everybody doing?
Doing well, Justin. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm gonna pretend like we haven't been talking for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm fantastic.
Dr. Loughman.
What's
How are you doing tonight?
What did you talking? I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
The Craw Daddy.
The Craw
Yes.
Daddy.
So, real quick, this episode is brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. At least two of the three people here can attest that their stuff is awesome.
Oh,
Chris,
I can too.
Chris needs to get on the bandwagon. Chris is the only one that doesn't.
We're working on it,
Chris.
I need the new room built first. I need to stop spending money.
I finished my Aki setup with the XT4. They seem to be liking it. They also seem very confused. There's all of a sudden a lot more room. Came out really good, easy to build, all that good stuff. Definitely check them out, Facebook and Instagram. And then you have to shout out the fine folks at Silent Hill Reptiles, who are also doing really good stuff. You need to go hunt them down as well. Facebook and Instagram, silenthillreptiles.com. And stay in the loop with what they're doing. JT produces some of the nicest stuff around. I'm not biased when I say that. It's purely objective.
Yeah, he's got some cool plans going this year, and I think he's already moving into brumation.
He
does. He brumates a little early. Man.
Yep.
So, yeah.
But this episode, I'm joined by one of my favorite people in herpetoculture.
Thank you, Justin.
Yes.
My two favorite people in herpetoculture.
Thanks, Justin.
Dr. Loughman and KP.
So, I'm excited.
Happy to be here.
Me and Dr. Loughman have, been at times been at odd ends of the spectrum. When we were out doing research on Emoryi, which is something we're going to cover tonight. My camp, my obvious genetic background had one view, and Dr. Loughman's had a different one. But we have, in many times, talked on the phone and chatted and become good friends. And I think this is our first time on mic together, right?
I think it is, yeah.
Awesome.
Should be. No, it's going to be good.
They're like, we're going to do a podcast, and we're like, I feel like every time you come on a show, you end up talking about crypto and stuff. So I was like,
let's keep it lighthearted and happy.
Sure, you're probably that's a horse that has been dead for a long time, and you just continue to have to beat it.
It's probably going to pop up again tonight because it is. I saw the outline and it said your history with corn snakes, and unfortunately, crypto and corn snakes.
We can do the Cliff Notes version of that.
Yes.
Though.
Yeah.
I'm mostly just curious because you guys have a big group at the university. I figured we talk about sort of what the plan was, like what you were doing with that and whatnot. So
tonight's definitely going to be a lighthearted talk about taxonomic.
Well, I mean, Chris is here. It's always lighthearted.
Yep.
I tell everybody I got a bad back, right? And it's because I have big shoulders. But
I'm carrying the weight of this show.
I have big shoulders because I got to carry the weight of
carrying
this network, and it's a lot. But we're getting
it is a lot. No, we're good. No, I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk corn snakes. Corn snakes are actually near and dear to my heart because the first thing I bred was a corn snake all the way back.
Nice.
20 years ago, this past March would have been when that went down. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Tied to them since.
They're so. Anyways, we could pontificate for hours on how wonderful they are, but so I guess all of our seasons are over. Zach, you still hatching anything out?
No, I went to the incubator.
Falsies ever quit.
Falsies have stopped. I counted the total number that I made, and then I felt a little wrong, a little dirty at that number because I was like, that's not possible.
Giving Mogwai away to everybody? Is that what?
Yeah. There's no way we made that many. And then the students who have to take care of them the first month of their lives were like, yes, we made that many.
They're just crying and their fingers are bleeding.
Yeah, they're all angry. I was like, okay. So we did. So next year we're going to pull back a little bit on that. But I just checked the incubator.
They'll let you. You may not have a choice.
True. There's probably a bit of sperm retention going on there. You're absolutely correct.
Story about that, Zach.
We were just at the incubators yesterday. That damn sperm retention. And unfortunately, we had a clutch of Barons racers. We never can catch our female Baroni when they're gravid. They don't show it well, at least at West Lib. and they always lay their eggs at the beginning of a trip when I'm going to be gone for like 7 or 10 days because I check religiously those guys. And sure enough, I was like 6 days into a field trip. I think it was in August, and I got the message. Oh, the bear and I laid eggs. I was like, can I see pictures of them? And basically, the student response was no. I was like, okay, they're dried up in a cork tube. That's what that means. So, but we officially threw them out yesterday. That kind of hurt. The clutch crashed, and then I inherited Jen Archer's massive Florida king snake and goini collection, which I know you're so jealous of, Smitty. There's over 100 of them that I acquired in like a day.
That's my nightmare.
Yeah. I was sexing some today to make sure that we were right, and they're just biting. They don't just musk; they can projectile musk. Like, that is a skill. It's not like an ooze. Like it's like when you pop a zit and it hits the mirror.
It's not a slow seep.
Yeah. And it smells, and I don't know why. I just find it endearing. It doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, no, I was sexing some of those, but the students were in with those, and Jen said that there were some animals that make double clutch, and same deal. I pulled a bunch that looked like they were gravid, and we got clutches from them. But we had the females drop a couple surprise clutches. They looked like they all slugged out though, and they were in the incubator too. So I officially shut down the incubators yesterday. So last 3 snakes that I hatched out were the 3 carpet pythons that hatched. I think it was last week. So we're done.
Okay. Nice.
But no,
I'm still, as far as the bear and I go, I'm kind of still trying to figure out how I feel about that and if I want to sort of pursue those. I know Jake is super pumped to get his hands on some, so that may be his rhino.
Yeah.
But
no,
I don't know. Like so far, rhinos are still number one, man.
You're doing this in a public place.
We're gonna do this on air right now.
Yeah,
in front of the kids.
With the bear and I, are you keeping them in like a naturalistic setup?
Kinda.
Well, I don't
ever see it. It's small still.
Mine is literally creeping on me right now on the top of that stack.
Yeah, mine will poke his head out of the cork tube and watch me, but as soon as I come near it, he disappears. So
yeah, no, I love them to death. I have 2 in my office at school. I have 1 in my office here, and then we have 3. Our breeders are in a separate lab at school. And
oh, geez.
No, I've got a lot of them.
I'm not like completely writing them off. I feel like it's a little premature, and just having 1 snake is not a very good pool to draw an opinion from. So I don't know. We'll see. But
well, I've kept them. I've kept rhinos and bear and I because your rhinos were once my rhinos, and I can honestly say that the bear and I are kind of like cracked out rhinos when they're actually doing what bear and I
can
do.
See that.
And in case you haven't figured out, Metropeltis, as you say, is my North American colubrid genus. Hydrodynastes, my favorite snakes. Baron's racer, if it's got a little bit of like cracked mentality in it and wants to eat your face, that's my snake.
That little bit of 8-ball,
Yeah.
But then you have like the calmest of the Pitchiophis, the Jani. Yeah. They're just like, we're chill.
Well, we actually, so this is fun. I'm going to Tinley for the first time this weekend.
Oh, nice. Wonderful.
And I'm bringing a bunch of students with me. So I already told them, like, we had a meeting about it. And I was like, listen, when I walk through that door, you don't talk to me for 4 hours. For 4 hours, I just go, and then we'll come back and we'll, do our thing. But because I've waited for this and tried to go multiple times. But anyway, I realized if we get Anectins, we have all the Pitchophis that live in North America at the school. That's the only subspecies we need. Minus
Pulpillus?
I was just about to say, minus that insular crazy thing, which I don't think I really want to dive into that. But we have Ruthveni and Loading Eye, and I just got the Southern Pines. They're growing up here.
Okay.
And then we got multiple localities of Northerns.
Speaking of Southerns, I was trying to get another one from the same buddy that I got mine from that I thought was a female, and I probed it the other night, and the probe just kept going and going and going And I was like,
Yeah.
son of a bitch. Like,
Male Pitiophis will eat up a probe.
Yes.
well, my buddy, he hatched out. He had a clutch of 5, and all of them are males. So he's got like nothing but boys. And I'm like,
Pitiophis like to make males. They don't survive. That's such a shitty way to say that. If a pit's
They're
gonna
doomed
die,
to die.
in a well-kept Pitiophis, if something's going to die, it's going to be a male, just sporadically. Lineaticalis are kind of notorious for it. I've heard that Jani could do it. I have not had that. But so you said North American or all of the United States?
No, I said North America. Not North America. I meant the United States.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, so you have Depi? I was like, because that's...
No. We don't have Vertebralis and Depi. I have, obviously, we got the Jani from you. So,
yeah.
And that's going to be part of the West Lib colony. They're in my office at school.
Jani are so... Anyways, one of these days I'll talk to somebody about Jani for 4 hours and it'll be... But today, we're here talking about... Well, actually, let's wrap up a couple things.
Yes.
Maybe don't go into super deep detail on breeding plans for next year, but I'm guessing you guys are doing spreadsheets like I'm doing spreadsheets, getting everything, planning pairs, getting ready to couple extra meals to some of the females that are going to be going down for brumation soon. I'm guessing that's on y'all's itinerary.
Yep. We're doing, we're not doing anything like what we've done in the past. We made over 300 colubrids at the university this past year. So that was all for a kid's master's thesis. And Taylor, hopefully she'll be graduating. And pretty much my animal care coordinator and the other students that'll be around that were around this year were just like, can we please take a break? I was like, yes, we can take a break.
They poop so much.
Yes. And they eat so much. So all that I'm really doing is working on my king projects. And then I'm going to breed a couple, I'm going to make false water cobras. That's what I do. Yeah. But then I segue over into the hognose snake book full steam starting in February. And I have a grad student coming in. We're going to do I think we're going to do a thesis where we look at body condition index, create one of those for Western hogs. So that means we need a lot of hogs. So next spring's all about heterodon. And that's pretty much it.
The year of heterodon. Awesome.
Chris, what is so when you do spreadsheets, what are you putting on those?
So usually what I'm looking at is I'll put any females that I want to breed because like this year I'm not breeding a few females. I'm not going to breed black pines. I'm not going to breed a couple of the corns that I bred the last 3 years. Just give everything a year off. But I'll always put down, sometimes I'll put weights down. You know what I mean? Especially if I had a female that lost a lot of weight. I had a corn snake female that lost a ton of weight this year after laying eggs. She was tiny. She was like the minimum size I would ever breed a corn snake, and she laid 16 eggs, and they were massive eggs, and all of them hatched. They were all fertile. So I'll kind of investigate stuff like that. But then I do a really good, and my wife always gives me a hard time because like I'll clean and I'll play with snakes, but when I'm getting I know that I'm going into breeding plans, I'll like really play with the females. I'll feel them. I'll make sure all the vertebrae feel good. I'll, take them out in the sun, look at them. Do I have any stuck sheds or a scale that looks off? Or is there anything that I will find that could be a negative inhibitor as this animal goes into the most stressful thing it's ever going to do in its life, which is, not necessarily brumation, but ovulating, breeding, producing eggs, pooping out eggs, and then trying to recover from it in some extremely unnatural way. And so I do that, but then I always make a list of the females, especially with corns. Like I've got 4 Emoryi projects next year, and then a lot of the Pitiophis is just like these are the pits that are breeding, and then the things I'm going to try to breed that didn't breed, and then I have a lot of Leonis this year, and that was actually more of a struggle because like what males am I putting to what females, because you can kind of do whatever you want, and they're so I'll have like a pin band female that has like a gray ground color, and then an MS milk snake phase male, or do I want to pair her to a male that's more typical to her? But yeah, I'll just write down the pairings, and I'll stick to it. So that's my biggest thing is like if I write down a pairing, that is the pairing for next year. I won't try different males. If that pairing does not work, I'm not gonna breed that animal. And I want it to be that way. I want it to be, that's my little calculation in it. This is my plan. I'm going to stick to it. I'm not going to try anything else, especially because you could have a male that like you didn't see lock up and you left it overnight and then you get a different male in there with them, and then you start pooping out some weird genetics, and you're like, wait, okay, hold on, do I have a clutch of 2 different males? Because there's been stories of that, and I believe there's been research done on that. And then also, wait, was that male actually het for this? Or especially with corn snakes, that can become a mess. I like to think I have a good grasp on the genetics of my collection, but that's probably not true, right? Like the second we think we know,
stuff lurking in the background somewhere.
And then first-time breeders, I usually start, let's say the end of September, and this is just me, and this may be a terrible idea, end of September into October, where I'm giving them their last couple meals. I'll usually feed them a little heavier, and I'll usually feed them fatty stuff. Rat pups is like my go-to. Live rat pups. I got a buddy that breeds rats and produces just beautiful. He cares about his rats, so he's feeding them well. And I'll put a little bowl of 3 or 4 rat pinks in there, and they'll just gobble them all up. And it seems to, I don't know, it seems to work, but I don't have enough tenure to say that I know that this is a good process. But yeah, so that's kind of so there's a spreadsheet. I know what I'm breeding. There's a feeding plan, and I kind of just stick to it no matter what.
Do something similar, but nothing like that. I have this notebook, and everything that happens in my collection goes in the notebook. Where the hell's my camera? So there you go, notebook, and it's a day planner. And then there's a section in there for notes, and I'll just sit here old school and just write it all out, and then I'll put it in a Google sheet.
Yeah,
and that's
Mine's much more simple. I have my Notepad app.
Oh yeah,
I put my pairings down, and then if I see locks or I notice like pre-lay sheds, I write down the date.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Boom.
Yeah, see, I do mine in Excel, and then I have like a row. So I have a column of each pairing, and then it'll be like post-brumation shed, visual locks, pre-lay shed, egg number laid, how many good, how many bad, how many, what day they hatch, how many hatched. And then I'll do like post-ovulation shed, and if they double clutch, which is usually something I never want to double clutch. There's too many babies already, like no double clutches. But if I do get a double clutch, I'll mark it in that same, follow the column down, have a new row for it. And then there's been occasions where I'll actually track who I sell animals to, especially anything with like projects I'm working on, like specific projects or like specific lineage stuff. Like some of the Alterna are like, somebody might hit me up in 4 years and be like, hey, I bought a 3 Mile West dark Alterna F2 from so-and-so. Did you sell that to him? And it's kind of good to be able to be like, yeah, that's true locality. And here's the grandparents, and here's where the wild caughts were found, and by who,
cool,
and whatnot. Yeah. So sometimes, or I just keep them all, which is also fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting when they hatch, and you're like 3 days out, and they're all out, and you're like, I'm not keeping any of these except for that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one.
It's clutch 8, and you have 4 holdbacks.
Yeah. When our black pines hatched, I didn't want to get rid of it. Like, they're all still at West Liberty, every single one of them. And now there's one from you, thank you, added to the mix. So
that snake was an absolute dirtbag.
Mm-hmm. He's here at my house actually, and he eats like a champ. So
yeah,
he can be a dirtbag as long as he keeps eating. That's all I care about.
I actually had a pair of Diones as holdbacks, and then I had one that still had never fed, and I sold the pair, and because I was like, you know what? I'm going to pair them again. I'm going to make more. Like, there's no need for me to really hold on to any right now. So I sold the pair, and then I told, it was my buddy Dustin Sutton. I said, hey, if you want this non-feeder, I'll throw it in there. It's not losing weight. There's nothing wrong with it. It's active. It moves. Like, it's looks completely normal. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that snake. It just hasn't eaten it all. So I sent those off. I try to tell myself that, though. I try to limit holdbacks per clutch at least to where it's like 1 or 2, unless it's something in particular, like the Tessera stuff that we did this year. And it's tough because then sometimes I'll just hold on to stuff for a while because I'm on the fence about it, just to kind of see which direction it goes. And then kind of say, okay, I really don't like non-essential personnel. I'll kind of go through and do like a inventory of who's here and who should be and who shouldn't be, or who doesn't need to be, and go by that. But it's really hard because especially when you get stuff that has a may not look great now, but you have a feeling it's going to turn out real nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's like, what am I going to just hold on to it for 3 years until it gets to where it needs to be? Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
My Alterna project that I'm like, one of the things I'm the most excited about is I've got this male F1 3 Mile West Alterna from Stu Tennyson. That's like, it's black. It's a black snake. It's for every nobody I've ever seen has posted a Alterna that looks like this. And then I've got a female from Justin's dad that was produced by Anthony Corval,
Nice.
and she's extremely dark. I mean, she's her actual ground color is just dark. So I paired them up this year, and I got a beautiful clutch. Well, I got some babies that look like they're mind blowing. Like there's Alterna don't look like that usually from this locality, and I'm like, I know that these are going to be black like dad. I could just tell they're going to go, but all of them kind of hatch with this extremely sky blue ground color.
Oh, cool.
So I've got to wait. I can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to grow them up a little
like
bit.
stuff like that is kind of the exception, where it's like, okay, this isn't just, like the F1 Ladies Island stuff that I have, like where it's like one or two kind of stand out a little bit, so I'll hold on to those, and it's definitely not one of those things where it's like I got to hold on to every single one of these and see what happens.
They change so much. It sucks. It doesn't suck. Maybe it's part of the adventure. I with garbs and lychees, I tend to hold on.
Yeah,
to them
those
for
are
a
really
little while.
hard.
They change so much every shed, and they shed twice a week. It seems like, and it's how do you pick a holdback, right? So
No,
don't
I did that stuff for a little while, and you are correct. And I wasn't prepared for how many eggs racks lay.
Oh yeah.
I thought, all right, we're gonna lay like a couple eggs, we're done, and it's like 2 eggs a month for the next 10 months. But no, the gargs are kind of fun. We have some gargs at school. And that's the one thing I'll let the students breed if they want to, just to kind of experience the process, because we always need more of them.
Yeah.
But they took pictures of them once a month for like a year, I think, and it was crazy how that ontogeny shifted from one extreme to another.
It's wild. Get them some lychees so they can learn what stress
we
is.
have lychees. We have a dozen lychees. We can't get our lychees won't breed. They just bite the shit out of people.
Yeah.
We have Nuanas, and we have Grand GTs and Yates. Like we've got the big ones.
The Yates, yeah. That's
I would say Yates.
Dude, those things are like baby Yates are $2,500, $3,000.
I know.
Yeah.
And we tried to get them to breed, and all they do is look at each other, and they do all the cuddling. They go in their cork tubes. They do everything. They just will not commit. So
have you had any like really just beat the ever living shit out of each other?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what mine like to do. Yeah.
No, I had that happen. So the first time, this was like 2 or 3 years ago. This is pre-COVID. I had a student who was like, I want to do a breeding project for my capstone. We have the last class you take in our biology degree, you do a project and then you present it to the department. And I was like, well, I bought like these freaking lychees not to look at. Like, let's try to get them to pair bond and do all that jazz. And I wanted to honor the localities. I did not want to make mutts.
Sure.
And we put the Yates together, and we got I remember I got a phone call. It was like midnight, 12:30, 1 in the morning, because one of the things that's great about being a professor is you realize how literal people take the things you say.
Yeah.
In this case, it worked out, because I said to the student, like, all right, now you got to sit here all night and you can't go anywhere.
Sit there with a flashlight.
And they sat there literally, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and that's when they decided, like, yeah, this is not happening, and just started like Godzilla destroying each other in this Viv. And they didn't call me.
They sound like demons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I had that same pair here. This is also what's fun. And they were in this room. And I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell my son that there were lychees here. And my wife and I are sound sleepers. But when thunderstorms would move through, the male would just start like clucking and making all those vocalizations. Well, my poor kid was like 6. He's like, there's demons. What the hell is in the basement? And I'm like, and he heard them for like 2 or 3 nights in a row and just didn't tell me, and he wasn't sleeping. And he's like, there's something down there. I was like, yeah, there's something down there. It's just a gecko. It's like, damn it.
But it is the stuff of nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
They pairing those, it's like you need to be on neutral territory. You
Yes.
can't be taking one into another one's. I mean, it sounds like y'all kind of done all the research.
Oh
on
no, we did,
pairing them.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people are like, I mean, they lay eggs, they incubate at room temperature, they eat paste. Why are they so expensive? And it's like, breed them.
Yeah, get them to pair bond. I can
Get them to pair bond. And to get them to stay paired, because they'll start fighting and they'll go over territorial issues. And it's like, you almost have to put them with like one stick in the enclosure, open sides. You don't want to have them with closed sides. They need to be able to see out. And then they've got to be able to sleep next to each other. And if the male's one direct, it's super fun.
No.
I love it.
No. So
I do have leeches
leeches are
available.
big.
If anybody's looking for baby leeches, go ahead and hit me up at Badlands Herpetoculture on Instagram. Go ahead and hit me up.
There we go.
Buy one, get one free.
Alrighty. Yes.
No.
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 So,
early Christmas special.
Early Christmas special. You may buy one at full price, and I will still have you pay shipping.
Nice.
So you're talking about school, and I'm assuming it's not a daycare.
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about? I know you've talked about this a million times.
Which is yes.
This is the other dead horse.
Yeah, the other dead horse. It's real quick. What is your professorship, and what is it that you do?
Yeah, we were going to do the 5-minute or less version. So
2 minutes.
All right, we'll do it in 2 minutes. Biology professor, West Liberty University. West Liberty started a zoo science major, which prepares people to work in zoos. In the biology department, 2016. I wasn't supposed to be in charge of it. I was supposed to be the ecologist. I run the crayfish lab. You can see right here, wherever the hell it is. There it is. The guy that was supposed to run zoo sci went and became the director of a zoo. And then I was told, it's yours. So I got to live my 19-year-old dream and basically create a giant reptile collection that I oversee with another individual.
Yeah.
And can live vicariously through that collection. And then that made me, of course, have to get my own collection. So now there's just snakes everywhere.
Nice.
That's
awesome.
it in a nutshell. Oh, and I have grad students. I'm always plugging the grad students because I'm always looking for grad students. So I run, we used to call it the evidence-based herpetoculture lab because you always have to have a name when you have a lab. But that's changed because the grad student working on the project was like, yeah, what about me? I do field research with snakes. And I was like, ooh, yeah. That's not herpetoculture. So now it's the applied herpetology and herpetoculture lab. So
AKA Thunderdome.
Yes, also known as AHA. So
I like it.
And so it's kind of starting out right now, but we've put out some publications. I wrote a book that should be published soon. And I'm always looking for grad students to come on. So there you go. I think
Wonderful.
That was good.
Yeah,
that's perfect. That's perfect.
I texted him or messaged him one day. I was like, "How do I become a grad student?" And I was like, I dropped out after 3 semesters.
You just have to finish that 4-year degree. That's all.
He was like, "Go back to school." I was like, "Shit."
Can I do it online at the age of 40?
That's right.
Yes. You actually can. That's my answer to that.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. Does it cost the monies?
Yes, it costs the monies.
Okay, so we're out. We checked one box. We checked one. We were almost there. We were
almost there. Almost there. Halfway there. Yeah.
Okay. So in this program, in this institute, I'm assuming that there's been experience with corn snakes, and I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yes.
In positive lights only.
Positive, mostly positive. So
like 97% positive.
Yeah, 97%. I'll even go 98%.
Okay.
So when we were when I was starting this whole thing back in 2017, I did what nerdy academics like me do, which is you kind of go into the literature, you find journal articles, and I was just trying to figure out what the hell does academic herpetoculture even look like, and what does it look like with snakes? Those were the 2 questions I needed to answer so that I could then join the party. And long story short, corn snakes are kind of the lab rat or the white mouse of academic herpetoculture when it comes to snakes. So if you're going to do a UVB study, does UVB change the blood chemistry of snakes? There's a UVB study that's done on corn snakes. There's a couple actually. If you're going to study how do snakes respond when you give them a lot of stuff in an enclosure and then you keep them in a minimalistic enclosure? The standard snake that you're going to use for that is a corn snake.
Sure.
So that's what we would call a laboratory animal. That's what we call culture animal. And so I knew immediately, all right, well, if that's the case, we need a bunch of them because this is the kind of standard. So
I mean, are they a decent baseline for most other species? I mean, obviously you're going to have your
That's
outliers,
a good question.
but for boids and other stuff, is it?
I don't think that comparing the results for a corn snake to like ball pythons, I think that's totally apples to oranges. It's not apples to apples. I also don't think comparing corn snakes to something like a hognose snake is apples, to apples. I think that's apples to oranges. But for the family Colubridae, for a, using fancy speak, rodentiferous colubrine, yes, basically means snake that eats rodents. That's in the colubrid lineage. And so the only snake that I had during my period away from herpetoculture, I've kept snakes continuously since 1996. But from 2006 to 2016, that 10-year period, I had 2 snakes in my collection. I had a Brooks King, and I had a corn snake that I raised. So corn snakes kind of ever been present. So I took that male, his name was Herschel, and I just went to the local herp show way back when, and I bought the first normal-looking female I could find. I didn't care what was in it. I just was like, you look somewhat normal. That's what I'm looking for. And then first breeding project we did for Zoosci was we bred corn snakes. So
that's awesome.
We started our research colony through, our means. And then we bred that male and that female in 2016, 2017, 2018. And then in 2018, 2019, they all run together now. I think it was 2018 though. That's when the infamous crypto strike happened and essentially wiped them all out. I mean, like the one snake that our crypto strain would like kill were corn snakes. And so all those babies, all those juveniles, all that stuff, they died. So we had to kind of start over again. But the male and the female that founded the colony were still alive. So I went and I picked up some Abbott line Okeetees.
Nice.
And we raised those. And then West Virginia passed a rule that's starting to change that basically made holding corn snakes illegal. And several people started surrendering corn snakes to the DNR. And the DNR was then like, oh, crap. Now we have corn snakes because we made a rule. We got to do something with all these corn snakes.
Didn't plan for that, did you?
Yeah. And I know the people that do that stuff, and they knew that we had the collection at West Liberty. So we got a lot of free corn snakes that way. All kinds of different more. I couldn't tell you what they are. I know you all could rattle them off. I think one's a lavender. I think one is a snow.
Is it white?
Yes. And then that's all I know. And there's a couple other that are like pink and orange and tangerine. So there you go. But we bred those together, and now we're sitting on, I don't know the exact number of adults that we have, but I tried to get it at 10.10. So we have 10 males, 10 females, and we have at least 5 different males to add some heterogeneity to the mix. So that is the corn snake colony that's rolling at West Liberty.
Nice.
And then we've done several projects with the offspring. Taylor Hartman, the master student, that was the reason why we were breeding all the snakes. We're testing the kind of old adage in herpetoculture. If you incubate the eggs at a cooler temperature, you get bigger offspring. If you incubate them at a warmer temperature, you get you get it not a warmer. Well, I guess you do. Get a smaller offspring. So we bred corn snakes pretty much nonstop for the past 3 years. And then I knew we were going to be doing that. And I knew that we had some pretty neat personalities in our snakes. Like some of the corns want to rip your face off, which is weird for corns as adults. And then others are just like gentle, and some of them won't eat. And I wanted to see, like, is there a genetic predisposition there that will show up in the offspring? And I have this student who's a rock star as an undergrad. She's going to stay with us for grad school. Her name is Bree Light. And she came to me, like, the timing was perfect. And she didn't know what she did to herself, because she came in like late February and she was like, I want a big project. And I was like, okay, why don't we track the first 6 months of life for every corn snake we make this year? And she was like, yes. So we made close to 140 corn snakes this year.
Oh, man.
Well, we got 140 eggs. I asked Bree before I came on tonight to make sure my numbers were right. We're sitting at 100 to 105 babies right now.
Sure.
And we're not getting rid of any of those babies until January. And so we have tracked the weight of mom. We've tracked every time we fed mom and dad. We've tracked how many times they've crapped, how many times they've eaten, what they've eaten, their mass every 3 weeks. And that's for all those snakes.
Wow.
So what the goal is I just want to like be able to publish what the first 6 months of life look like for a corn snake, because that data doesn't exist. And that's kind of a standard publication with laboratory animals. Like that exists for axolotls, that exists for white mice, for lab rats. It does not really exist for corns. So I thought, okay, we could do that. And then the other thing that's really cool is since we incubated those eggs at cool temperatures and warm temperatures, we're also looking at the difference in baby fitness over that 6 month period of time. So like everybody talks about how big the babies are when they come out. Well, does like that bigger baby catch up with the smaller babies at 6 months out, or do they really see that like increase in size for the duration of their lives? Like, is there really an additive advantage to doing that? So
is it linear, or is it more like a bell curve, right? Like at some point, all these things start to kind of those decisions that you made early on, pre-hatching. Is it That's
I
need
amazing. Someone to replicate the mouse cutting.
Oh, we can do that.
That's a great project. Easy. Yeah.
That would be a good one. I keep saying every year when I have eggs that I'm going to do it, and then I'm like, wait a second, like keeping track of these things. Basically, I didn't want to, because I'm horrible about notes and things like that. I was like, I know at some point I'm going to miss something, and I mean, really, I'd be doing it just for myself. But I think in terms of like if someone's looking for something, I think that's a really easy one to do, but I think it'd also be really interesting to see if you get the same results that Hurley did.
That's the exact kind of study that I like to do.
One thing that I've always been interested in somebody doing is if you offer a snake multiple small prey items compared to one large, but the weights were identical or similar within some percentage, right? Like let's say I have a 5 gram fuzzy and 2 pinkies that added up to 5 grams, but carry that on up into adulthood. That would be pretty neat.
I did that.
Yeah. So what's the answer? Tell us.
We actually did it with corn snakes. Now I'm thinking about it. We do a lot of things with corn snakes. So we did that way back in 2017. My first clutch of false water cobras ever. I was trying to justify not getting rid of any of them. So I was like, we need them for science. So that's why we're going to keep them all. And so I had and we also had, of course, the baby corn snakes. So we did exactly that thing. I had a student and I had her go up, and her name was Colleen Hazelton. She took pinky mice and figured out how many pinky mice equaled a fuzzy. Nice. And then we did that exact thing. And I can tell you, based off our sample size, I'm not saying this works for every snake on planet Earth because there's all kinds of variables you have to control for. But smaller items more often definitely led to more growth. And I think biologically, comes the dog, why that happens is that physiologically their metabolism goes up and then it kind of stays up. And when it stays elevated, that becomes their homeostatic state. Like that's normal, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. And you don't lose any energy because you're staying up there, and that energy allocation goes straight to growth. When you feed them that large prey item, every time you feed them that 1 a week large prey item, they got to ramp their metabolism up, then they got to digest it, and then they come back down again, and they go into a resting state, and then you're hitting them with another prey item, and they're going to lose energy when they ramp back up get to the And there was another study that was done.
Body in motion stays in motion kind of thing.
Exactly. There's another study that I'm doing right now because it was referenced in an Indigo paper, and I was like, what the hell? Like, how the hell wasn't this been done? I don't know if it was like a legit study or just a mention. I can't remember. But they were trying to figure out how to get indigo snakes to be get to releasable size as soon as possible. And they found that feeding multiple prey items, but different prey items, led to increased growth.
Okay.
So if you gave like a fuzzy and a quail chick, there's completely different macromolecules there. So you're basically just you're not only keeping them at that elevated state, but something that might be missing from a rodent they're going to pick up with the bird was the idea.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So no, I'm doing that with my 4 false water cobra holdbacks I have right now. They're from this year. They're getting that exact diet. They get a rat pink on Monday, and I believe they get a quail on Thursday, and then we throw tilapia in there every other week. And I just want to see if they grow more than others. So
interesting. So you also did the UV experiment with corn snakes. I remember hearing you talk about that at one point.
Yes, we did. And with the UV, what we did with that is we always use babies because they're just smaller and they're easier to manipulate.
Yeah, a million of them. Yeah.
And you always need big sample sizes when you're doing science. But the problem is that demographically, a baby snake is different biologically than a juvenile, and a juvenile is different than an adult, and an adult is different than a geriatric. So I kind of always question our results when we do these baby studies. But I can flat out say with the corn snakes, we did see a preference towards not necessarily towards full-blown UV and not towards no UV. They hung out in that intermediate zone where the lights would kind of overlap, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then we do all these damn projects and I don't think about them ever. And now I'm like, oh yeah, we did this. And then we did that. We did another study with corns, which was really cool. And this impacted me as a keeper. This made me question keeping Pantherophis the way I did. We bought great big massive vivaria from Animal Plastics.
Yeah,
they were 6 feet long, 3 feet deep, 2 feet tall, and then we put dividers down the middle of them. We still have these things, by the way. And one of my former grad students, and I work with her now, Kinsey Guthrie, we cut a hole in the divider, and we gave them the ability to choose. And one side of the vivaria was just decked out with sticks and mulch and water bowl and a vertical hide hanging off the top and a hide on the bottom. And the other side was newspaper hide bowl. And the corn snakes above, like the corn snakes and the false water cobras that were in the study, like they literally went to the newspaper to crap. It was the only reason they went over there. So they would go over there, defecate, and then they would come back, and they just spent their entire time in that naturalistic enclosure. And what was also really interesting was we had video cameras on them, and we basically recorded their behavior. Like Kinsey had to sit there and watch hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. And the corns in particular were out moving around in that vivaria every single day. Every day they did multiple laps, exactly when they do laps in nature. They were crepuscular. So they would come out right when it was getting dark and for like the first 2 hours of dark. And then they would go up into their hides for like the rest of the night. And then at daylight, when the lights would come on, they'd be cruising around a little bit. And then they would go back to their hides. And that just kind of, that made me question keeping them in racks because we were literally testing them. And I don't care what people do. I'm just simply saying, for me, given the fact that they literally were crapping on the rack setup, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to do this. I'm going to give them their space. But, if you put mulch in there, you give them a hide, you give them a stick, you're adding complexity to a rack tub. I mean, this was like as minimalistic as you can get. Mm-hmm. But no, the adults definitely, it was very telling to me how much they were actually engaged in that space.
Yeah, it's just seeing, obviously I'm full blown the opposite of a scientist, and just in my collection, but meeting, I'm good friends with John Lasseter and kind of switching over my keeping to his style of keeping, aka the Church of Lasseter, and the options. And the way I found that I do my options and efficient and economical ways to do that, because there's that is involved when you have 100 snakes. Yep. And just the way they act, it's you'll find a snake that's very food aggressive, sometimes overly defensive, that's in a tub with aspen and a water bowl, which, you know what? That snake will probably live just as long as my snakes. I'm not going to poo-poo on anybody that does that, and that's fine. You keep them on paper with a water bowl. A lot of people have been doing that for 50 years, and have shown success, but also how often are you in the room, how often are you stressing them out, how often are the lights on, how often are you interacting, how often are you cleaning. There's so many variables in that, but just giving them options the way that I've kind of decided to do it myself. I don't have a lot of cage aggression or tub aggression anymore. I don't open up and have snakes flying out that are not Getula complex. And you know, it's you know, you'll find some, man, you start seeing between 20, 30 adult corn snakes, maybe 20 adult corn snakes, start seeing similarities. Wow, a lot of these are doing the same thing. They're hanging out in that particular type of hide at that particular time. And it's really, every day we're so lucky to be able to learn more and transfer this knowledge to each other's brains. It's such a blessing that we have the community that we have now, because I said it to Justin when I first met him, and I say it to everybody that does this. You know, Zach, you've got your podcast. This is free, right? I don't get paid to do this, Justin. None of us get paid to do this.
No, we don't.
And you know, you get paid to be a professor and do your experiments, but if you never published anything and you never posted videos, you never did podcasts, you know, the herpetoculture family, right? We wouldn't know. So it's all free information, and gobble it up. People don't, you know, I come from breeding geckos in 1998, 1999, and the information that was available to us then, sparse. You know, you really had to experiment, and you had to get lucky. There's a lot of luck involved in what we did back then.
No, speaking of that, I remember back in 2003, I was like, I'm going to breed corn snakes. I went to Florida Tech I went to Florida for my first failed attempt at grad school and got the hell out of Florida. Then I ended up going to Marshall. But that lab is where that was the first time I was introduced to racks and large animal collection and breeding snakes. Up till then, I got to have one of this and one of this and one of this and one of this. And I thought, okay, I'm going to breed something this year. And that's where the corn snakes were. Sure. And I laugh at my incubator because I read the Kathy Love Bible. Yeah. And in there, they talk about making an incubator out of 10-gallon aquarium and bricks. And you get an aquarium heater, and you put it down in the water, and you dial it in to get it to 82 degrees. And then make sure the lid's tight because the babies will escape. And that's literally how I incubated my first clutch of corn snake eggs, was in that exact 10-gallon setup. And now I have like these molecular biology incubators and a sea serpent incubator in the garage, and I always think about that whenever I look at it. And then I talk to people like the Zirkles, who are like, yeah, we don't even incubate them, we just put them on the top shelf in our closet where we keep the snakes, and that's how they hatch. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I kind of didn't have an idea on what to do for an incubator when I started breeding things that needed to be incubated, because my room stays pretty cool because of the geckos. Geckos incubate at room temperature, and they're fine, right? So I wanted to hit that 80-degree mark. So I decided, hey, I'm an engineer. I could do some online research. And I went and I bought a $16 ice chest, igloo ice chest from Walmart. I drilled a hole in the side. I bought a Zoomed heat mat. I layered the bottom of it with water bottles as a heat sink. I took a workout mat and I cut it to the size, and I put it on top of the heat mat, and I put a probe with an ink bird, and I linked it all together, and I foamed up the hole because, you know, I was scared of something. And then I put them in the exact containers that I was incubating my geckos in. And damn, that thing held, you know, 80 degrees for awesome. 2 years straight. Never had a problem. And it's, you know, we can overcomplicate this.
Oh, hell yeah.
We can make this really easy. I can tell you, go buy a Sea Serpent's hot box. It is probably the best incubator on the market. But it's like getting that information out there, showing people how you did it. You know, I spent $40, $30 on that setup, you know, and had water bottles that were still good. Threw them in the fridge once I got my Sea Serpent's hot box, and so yeah, those experiments, those tries, those failures. A success is nothing if there weren't a million failures before it, and
oh hell yeah,
that's the whole point of the experiments. But awesome. No. And so I'm excited that you guys are using corn snakes. I love to see corn snakes in a light that is a scientific setting. You know, we've got our, we've got our snoot boopers, we've got our pet tubers, we've got our herpetoculturists, we've got our professional breeders. But guess what? These animals are also being used in a school setting, in an education setting. And it's awesome. It's great to hear that.
And we will be publishing that incubation study. I can't tell you the answer yet because we haven't looked at the data. We looked at the 1 year, and I'm not going to tell you what we did yet because that would be scooping Taylor. But
Yeah,
I'm excited to let the world know what we found, and then just prepare for everybody to say it's BS. So there,
it's
science.
Hit him with the Zac or Dr. Loughman. Tell him you can't beat science. You can't beat science without better science.
That's right.
Well,
That's
my
exactly
anecdotal opinions that I've seen with my 3 snakes beats that
giant sample size,
multi-hundred.
Yeah. I think it's like going to be close to 200 freaking corn snake eggs that went through this. It's not a small little, multiple genetic lines. You know what I'm saying? It's not just. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so no, that's what we've done with corn snakes.
Awesome,
quite a bit.
It's exceptional, and I hope you continue to use them. Hope they continue
we will.
To be your lab rats, and
they will be our lab rats
yeah.
Because we're good at. It's one of the snakes that we are able to use at the university that are able to handle the abuse of being taken care of by 120-year-olds. So, like, that's the thing that's interesting about this collection that Kinsey Guthrie and I oversee is like all of us that are doing this. It's our collection. So we go in and interact with those animals every day, and we learn the rhythm of the room and all that kind of good stuff. The rhythm of the room goes to absolute crap when there's 30 people in it.
Yeah,
because the mere fact that there's 30 people in it, just that alone is enough to make the snakes go, what the hell?
Yeah,
yes, and it's a teaching collection. It is not my collection to use for my will. All those animals are serving the purpose of teaching the next generation of herpetoculture peeps, and to do these publications. So we did this year, though. We've grown enough where I was like, okay, we need some like dedicated research space. And we need some animals that are going to be taken care of like by maybe 5 people instead of everybody. And so we did do that this year, which is cool. But no, the corn snakes, though, it doesn't matter. There are going to be 15, 20-year-olds in that room pulling tubs. You put the boy with the girl, he's still going to mate with her. So that's what matters.
The old adage that they're a good entry-level animal to keep, it's not only because there's a million morphs. It's a great place to step into the hobby, right? But the truth to it is, look at a range map, right? Look at a range map for the Gutatis complex. It's pretty damn big. Nothing is that successful in the wild without being able to deal with stress, breed under multiple conditions, feed well as a neonate, handle temperature swings like an absolute champion, and then be able to be kept in a million different environments, right? And it's you don't get a range map like that. Yeah. Look at the species that are really we find very fragile in the hobby. The ones that can't live in Florida, it's crazy. And then we look at, and then they don't do well with stress, right? Stressors really affect them. They don't breed well in diverse situations. They don't keep well in multiple different habitats, right? High humidity, low humidity. So there's so much more to chew on in that statement of it being an entry-level animal than there is they're pretty
and they're
right?
fun. They're pretty and they're fun. That's the other thing. Like when I got back into this in 2016, I was convinced that I have to work with something fancy.
Yeah,
I can't work with something that's like a corn snake. And now here I am, and I work with like the corn snake's thug brother, king snake. So you know what I'm saying?
I was going to say thorn scrubs.
Yeah, and thorn scrubs. I have thorn scrubs. Chris sent me thorn scrubs. We're going to talk about them soon.
Chris sent me thorn scrubs too.
Yeah. I have bled freely resulting of those snakes and cackled at the same time.
What a segue too. So if we're talking about range maps and we're talking about Gutatis, why don't we talk about Gutatis' bigger, uglier, stronger brother, the Emoryi complex?
Yes, 100%.
Zac, why don't you hit us with the Emoryi complex? What species, subspecies are we talking about?
Okay, so
currently.
Well, so this is where it gets kind of interesting.
Taxonomy is not even real.
I can give you exactly. It's all a lie, and I'm a taxonomist with crayfish. Anywho, people think that when these papers are published, that like the paper's published and then immediately the taxonomy that was present on papers published today on a Thursday.
Yeah.
The taxonomy that was the way we accepted it on Wednesday is now obsolete. That's not the way this works at all. It can be published. and you can look at that and read it and interpret it and basically be like, BS, I'm keeping the old way.
Brian Kovitz.
There you go. So with these guys, they're kind of fun. So up until 2002, the way that this worked is they were all basically, you would have identified them all as corn snakes with different subspecies. So there were the two eastern subspecies, which was Guttatus, or Gutata at the time, but now it's Pantherophis, so it went to Guttatus. So Guttatus, which is the corn snake, which we all know about corn snakes. And then there was Rosaceae, the rosy rat, which was endemic to the southern part of Florida, supposedly endemic to the southern part of Florida, and then the Florida Keys.
They're still there, Zach. They are.
They are. Okay. So we got the rosy rats down there, and then you kind of go over, and when you get into the middle part of the country, there was where the plains are. That's where we get the plains rat snake, Great Plains rat snake, Emoryi's rat snake, whatever you want to call it. And that's where Emoryi showed up. And at the time, prior to 2002, it would have been good. At that time, it would have been a Aleiphae, Guttata, Emoryi. And then you kind of work your way down to where you're from, Chris. And that's where you pick up our good friend, the thorn scrub. And that would have been Aleiphae,
Guttatus Milimorum,
Milimorum. And then hanging up in its own little isolated kingdom in Utah and Colorado, you had at the time Aleiphae Guttata intermontanus, which is the intermontane rat snake. And all the way back in the 40s, these things were being named and everything. Somebody called into question intermontanus in the 50s, so that one was the one that was kind of questionable. But everybody kind of just accepted this is the way. There were some people even back in the early 2000s that thought Milimorum wasn't anything, but we'll get to that in a minute because you're going to have your day, Chris.
I have a question with this. So, what's the significance between Guttata versus Guttatus in terms of Latin and that whole thing? Because I've seen that happen with some other species too, where it was originally like ended in an A, and then they changed it to an us.
Can totally answer that question. It has to deal with the genus name. So genera, and by the way, the word genuses does not exist. Don't say it. It's genera. So there's your little public announcement.
Don't you tell me what I can and can't use in my American language.
Someone will say that, but for the love of God, people, genuses, not a word. Genera. So when you change genera from one genera to another, in Latin, words are masculine or feminine. And that means basically that when you do a binomial, which is combining two names together, the genera, be it masculine or feminine, its sex is then dictated upon the specific epithet, which is the species name. So I don't know which one's masculine or feminine. I have to look this crap up in my Latin dictionary whenever I do this with crayfish. But basically, Aleiphae was one, and that's why it ended in Guttata. And then we went to Pantherophis following the revision of the North American rat snakes.
It's Guttatus.
The gender shifted, and that's when it went to Guttatus. So that's why that ended up happening. But in 2002, Frank Burbrink publishes a paper, and Burbrink is infamous for tackling the North American rat snakes. He's the reason why we had all the subspecies, and then we went down to 3, and everybody loses their minds over that. That is a conversation for another day. But he did that with North American rat snakes first, I believe, and then he hit the other rat snake, with the exception of Beardeye, obviously, which was the corn snake complex. And what he did is he looked at mitochondrial DNA, and he basically was able to show back using early 2000s genetics, which is about as different compared to what we do today as it could possibly be. But he was basically, make a very, very long story short, he had questionable sample size, but all these papers have questionable sample size. That's just the nature of the beast. But he got animals from Colorado, Texas, Great Plains, Louisiana, not Arkansas, Louisiana, East Texas, and then he got classic corn snakes from Southeast, and then he got the rosy rats. And what his results showed is that genetically, there was no difference between rosy rats and non-rosy rats. There was like zero difference. And he did some like morphometrics and showed like these things blur together. And so he kind of effectively sunk rosy rats. So if you've ever wondered, like, where did rosy rats go? That's when the rosy rats died, was in that paper. And then with Emoryi, what he did is he basically said that Emoryi is not a subspecies of corn snakes. Genetically, they form their own lineage, their own clade, and that's when Emoryi was officially split away from corn snakes. Was in just 2002. It wasn't that long ago. But then when he did that, he showed, based off his results, that the clades that were in Kansas, Colorado, Texas, Missouri, all over the place, they all grouped together. And so those were all Emoryi, no more subspecies. And then this population that's down in Louisiana, which was always thought, based off of its phenotype, to be the kind of contact zone between corn snakes and Emoryi, they were always viewed as integrate populations. They actually, based off his results, claded together, and that is when we got Slowinskii. So in one paper, a lot happens to corn snakes in 2002.
2002 was a huge shake. Yeah.
Yes. And what's interesting is that's the way it stayed until like just into 2009. And then it could, when Burbrink goes off, gets his PhD, he's now at the American Museum of Natural History. He's pumping out graduate students now. And a student of his did a study using Emoryi and Guttatus again. And basically their study was looking at, was basically in defense of Slowinskii. There were a lot of people that were like, this is bullshit. And there were a handful of people like, no, it's real. And whenever that happens and you're a taxonomist, you can either like say, I'm done and put my hands up, or you can kind of get a little prickly and defensive and decide to defend your species honor. It's super nerdy, but that's just the way this works. And so the best way to do that is you don't do the work. You give it to your graduate students. Say, now you do this thing that I want you to do for me. So that's basically what ended up happening. And a guy named Myers in 2019 looked at Slowinskii, the Emoryi group, and Guttatus, and he did some really crazy stuff. And basically what they did is they looked at genetics, and then they looked at where the animals lived, and then they did some modeling based off where the animals lived. And they defended Slowinskii and Emoryi being different from Emoryi because they said this. They basically said that Emoryi is a plain specialist. It will move into forests when they are present, but it lives in a completely different habitat than Slowinskii. Slowinskii is in these pine forest uplands.
Yeah.
And there's this idea in biology, it's called the ecological species concept, where it's where species can basically be separated by habitat preference. And that, like, the great big geographic barrier for these things has always been the Mississippi River.
Sure.
And anybody that does field herping around lakes or big rivers or water bodies has had the moment, and it's always with Pantherophis, by the way, where you're like in the middle of a freaking lake and there goes a black rat snake across the lake. Like, they just don't give a shit about water. So
yeah,
a lot of people said, like, so the Mississippi River is keeping these things from breeding, but we all see them moving across water. So basically, when I read the paper, the way I interpret it is they're saying, well, there was another barrier. It wasn't just the Mississippi River. It was this pine upland habitat.
Yeah.
And so that's what that paper said.
So more flora, more topographical differences.
Yes. So just last year in 2021, that's when the Marshall paper comes out. And there's backstory here that, like, lots of people don't know. There's like drama and tea.
Yeah.
Burbrink does not think subspecies are a thing. Like, written papers that literally say subspecies don't exist. This is complete BS. There's another guy, very, very, I shouldn't say guy. There's another kind of legendary herpetologist named Hillis, who's been at the University of Texas forever. Yeah. He has said subspecies are a thing and we need to honor them since the 70s. So this is so, like, to snake people, we're like, you know, Slowinskii versus Emoryi, Milomorum versus Emoryi. Like, in biology, these papers are important because it's more of a way of testing, like, subspecies versus species, species versus subspecies. So this paper comes out by Marshall, and what has always been the criticism of Slowinskii is that if you read the 2002 paper and the 2019 paper, there's this area in eastern Texas where those authors say Slowinskii isn't there. If you look at range maps, there's like this gap where they just don't show up. And herpers will say they're freaking there. They're on iNaturalist. Like, you can go on to iNat and see Emoryi animals in this area that don't exist. So that's what the Myers paper, or sorry, the Marshall paper did. Marshall looked at the contact zones between all these taxa, and that's when like the bombs dropped, because the bomb basically shows that Slowinskii and Emoryi bleed into each other, and then there's this southern Texas clade that they talk about in the paper.
South Texas, say Dr. Loughman.
Yes, South Texas. And then sure enough, in that manuscript, they're like, yeah, so there was like something to this South Texas thing. Let's bring Melamorum back. And so it's brought back. But poor Intramontanus, it's dead on the door now. Like, it's never gotten any kind of support. And that's one in this group that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I just look at that thing's distribution and I ask the question, how the hell did you get there? There's like no intermediate populations.
No.
And then it's phenotypically different, but genetically it's the same. So what that tells biologists is that it's invaded that habitat within the past million years, basically. And it hasn't been there long enough for the genotype to mutate, but the phenotype has absolutely mutated, because Intermontanus are different snakes. They're smaller. They got a different pattern. But what's happened is just the evolution's acting on that phenotype faster than it's acting on the genotype. I know you got to change the genotype to get the phenotype. It's hardcore evolution that'll bore everybody to death. We're not going to talk about, but inevitably it will be recognized. And there are taxonomists that say, okay, so if it's going to be recognized in the future, and we have a phenotype that we can recognize, but we don't have genes that we can recognize, why the hell aren't we just recognizing it now? And because nobody studies this group of snakes, poor little Intermontanus doesn't have an advocate saying that right now.
Yeah, so, that little population almost acts like a little insular population.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously,
it's totally an island.
Yeah, it's a mountain island that's it cannot get out of it. And if you look where it's at, it's literally surrounded by the Rockies. And I'm not the best with geography, but it's this tiny little pocket of rat snakes that are
and they
tiny
experience the most insane like temperature swings of any of this group. They go from like negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit to over 100 degrees in a given year. So there it is.
That'd be that little circle on the left hand side in the upper left of or middle of Colorado.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this figure, this is from the paper. What they did is they basically came up with a genotype for Emoryi, a genotype for Slowinskii, and a genotype for Melamorum. And that yellow you see in those pie graphs is the Emoryi genes. And you can see that Emoryi genetics bleeds into the Slowinskii and it bleeds into Melamorum. And that's why they basically say there's some genetic isolation here, but there's a contact zone where they all meet. And I normally am not on team subspecies. I don't like subspecies. This is one that I am totally on team subspecies for. Yeah, it makes total sense. So I relent to the Hillis lab approach to this, because it just makes sense, because they weren't collecting in that contact zone before, and now they did. Yeah. And if you go to the next map,
well, can you explain this predictive accuracy? What is?
Oh, that's for the graph to the right. That's not for the map.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. And we can look at maps. We don't need to look at graphs.
I like graphs.
Of course you do. You're an engineer. But no, there's a big map at the top of one of the pages. I don't know. But that's like the best map, because it basically is like, well, bam. Here is this thing. There it is. I just saw it. That one. Yes. And so there you have the Guttatus complex. Yeah. And I love on this map how they show how the colors blur together.
Yeah.
Where you get that blurring, that's where you would get an integrate. So you would basically get an intermediate between them all.
And then you notice that 40% of the population is south of the border, and none of that is on the above map, because you can't go down and study those as easily. I'm sure there's licensing, or I have no idea.
Oh yeah, there's permits and everything.
There's permits and stuff to go down. It's probably not where you want to be either.
Come from down here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like the 277 Loma Alta Bairds, the real steely colors ones.
Speaking of holdbacks, that's a hard. That was. I put some up for sale, and it was one of those things where it's like, if these don't sell, I'm completely okay with that.
That's okay. Yeah.
And then I took them down because I was like, nah.
So the thing that drives me crazy about this map, sorry, but I can't explain Southern Virginia and Northern North Carolina. That break makes no sense to me.
That's what we call the Mason-Dixon line, Dr. Loughman.
Well, no,
we don't do it.
The Mason-Dixon line is actually about 20 miles south of me. It's the base of the panhandle I live in.
Oh, okay.
We are deep in Dixie down there.
So
we don't do snakes along that line, Dr. Loughman. We don't have to worry about it. You're going to come here and study while I'm reloading, sir.
Yeah. But no,
what's this range map, if you kind of look at it, look at the Pitiophis range map. A lot of these similar things happen, especially with pine snakes. You have a lot more in the southern and more coastal areas, and then we have that break. And then now we've got them in Virginia, New Jersey. I don't know where New Jersey is because I'm ignorant, but it's somewhere up there.
Somewhere up here.
It's up in there, right off the eastern part of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's
you get
part
north of Texas, and I just hate you.
Yeah, there you go. Texas is its own universe.
It is.
It is.
So, but no, that's it in a nutshell. And then, well, I guess that's not entirely certain. So phenotypically, what's cool is Slowinskii do look like you took a corn snake and a typical Great Plains rat snake and just smashed them together. In some of those papers, what was cool is there was actually a little bit more genes from corn snake than Great Plains rat snake and Slowinskii, showing that there's definitely, but the hypothesis is that that's a recent integration because Slowinskii might be the newest kid it's either the newest kid on the block or it's ancestral to everybody else, and I think that's kind of badass.
Yeah,
so
they're really interesting.
It's probably my favorite of the group, to be honest with you. I really
sad times,
like it.
You know what I'm saying? Sad times.
Yes, but very close second, believe it or not, is the Milamore. I did not.
Because they're wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't even know that damn snake existed until like 5 years ago. And then when you offered up the pair to me, my favorite thing about them is that they're giant demonic monsters.
They're like massive.
They are not small.
They're huge, and they lay chicken eggs. So, so I can hit my experience, and I can talk about. So I look at this from I'm a visual, I'm a feel, I'm a breeding kind of guy, because I don't have any of the genetic scientist background. So for me, the big difference is in these four different, and we're going to say four because Inner Montanus is going to be its own thing. But you have Slowinskii, which are a little bit more slender, a little bit longer head sometimes, a little bit sharper nose. That can happen. Snake that has these kind of burnt umber, mahogany. It has that fall feel to it. They look like they live in pine needles, right? If you told me that animal lived in pine needles, I'd be like, that's where that lives.
That's where that is.
And then you go west and you hit Emoryi. So Emoryi is very diverse as far as their habitat, right? Like Emoryi can live in pretty much suburban areas, under 10, but go west. They live in the mountains, in the rocks. You go out looking for snakes at night in West Texas, and you're going to find Emoryi. You find something with a very light base color, a very green saddle color.
Yes.
A much heavier bodied snake, but not longer than a Slowinskii. They're both going to be about 3 to 4 feet. And they don't go through an ontogenetic change, like a lot of what we would say the Guttatus complex does, right? So, you take a baby corn snake and then you look at the adult corn snake that produced it and you're like, holy cow, where's all the red? Where's all the yellow, right? Where are the, I don't know the scientific names for those, but we're just, red and yellow.
We're good. Red and yellow.
Where are they, right? And then you go and look at a Emoryi in the West, and now there are some color palette differences from an adult to a baby. There are some pattern differences from an adult to a baby, but you just don't. It doesn't change a lot as it ages. There's that kind of seems to be a trend in the West. You have a lot of snakes that hatch, especially in montane areas, that look kind of similar as adults. Now, do they change? Yes, of course they do. The melanin comes in as they get older. The chromatophores that generate the colors in their scales definitely change. Their patterns definitely express themselves, right? Like you won't see all the speckling, you won't see all the netting in the scales, you won't see all of the diversity in the pattern. But then you go down to male morum, which is this ridiculous animal that is, we find them 6 foot long all the time. They can eat probably a colossal rat, but we feed them small rats, medium rats. They get huge. They will breed at an extremely small size, which is really weird about the male morum cob. Like they'll breed at 3 years, kind of regardless of their size. They're 4 foot long. They'll give you eggs. It might be 3, might be 4, but you'll get eggs out of them. And then look at your Lewinsky eye, look at your Emoryi eye, and you'll have clutches of 8, 10, 12, 14 kind of normally, and they're kind of corn snake egg size. Yes. And then you get your male morum and you breed them, and you have chicken eggs.
No, chicken eggs is giant babies, enormous babies.
And then as your
enormous babies,
as your brumation cycle goes, in my experience, they breed late. I think in Justin's experience, they also bred late.
They bred late for me.
All of the South Texas stuff that I deal with tends to breed late and have massive eggs. I had Clayburgh bulls last year that bred for me that were 6.5 foot long, big around as my wrist, and they gave me 6 eggs that were almost as big as a black pine egg. Black pines are just unrealistic animals with their eggs, but and the female didn't even look like she laid eggs. And this year, I think she laid 13 eggs. I got a buddy that has her. She's well over 6.5 foot long. I had to. A good local buddy of mine has those because it turns out feeding Pituophis this year was a financial burden.
Yes, it was.
So, 18, 20 adult Pituophis will literally eat you out of house and home. But she laid this year. I'm getting a few of the babies out of that clutch, but you're talking about massive babies out of these male morum, right? They're 10 times the size of a corn snake. Not really. Let's be actually accurate. 4 times the size.
Probably
of a corn
4.
Snake. 4 times.
Yeah. See here, that's what's interesting is I have zero context of how massive they are because I thought my female was like a decent size. The one that Chris sent me.
No,
and I bred her, and I got a perfect clutch of 5. And then I just sent that male and female to Ryan Dumas.
Yeah.
And he was amazed that female laid. He's like, this female's half the size of my female.
Yeah, because they breed so
I'm
small.
like, to me, I'm like, it's an adult corn snake size animal. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, let's give it a shot. Didn't think they went, wrote them off. Like nothing ever happened, whatever. She has a shed. I go and look and I'm like, you're gravid as shit.
Yeah.
And so then they had a human hide in there because I've been making a concerted effort to add those to pretty much all the tubs and stuff that things are in, just because I do notice they tend to hang out in them a lot.
Yeah.
Baird eye.
These options are awesome.
Options are awesome.
And yeah, I mean, she laid and it was the same thing. Like you wouldn't have thought she laid a clutch. Like,
nope.
Perfect body tone, no issues whatsoever.
South Texas all the animals do not get that tube of toothpaste look when they lay eggs. They look perfect, right? And I'm thinking that's just because I live here. I literally find them in my backyard. I was on the phone on a video call with the sluts. If you know, you know. And there was like 4 or 5 of us. I literally pulled over, got off my phone, got back on. It was the male,
wasn't it?
It was the male that I caught that I sent to Justin.
No.
That was a really cool little aberrant thorn scrub. And he proved out aberrant. The male that Justin hatched out is aberrant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I was literally on the phone and I was like holding
aberrant, just like uniformly aberrant in a weird way.
It's got
like
these little jawbone
It has
saddles,
like H. Yeah, it has like H's. Almost
cool.
Like a
Cool.
Odd. I don't know.
But it's there. We find them in the middle of the day. We find them in the middle of the night. We find them at all temperatures. You find them in the winter. We find obviously here we find atrox at 30 degrees, laid out flat on the roads and stuff.
Which is another interesting thing that I have to note is how similar pattern-wise at first glance they look like atrox because they have that facial band in the front.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I saw that walking
around, they narrow down their head.
Yep. If I saw that walking around and at first glance scanned over it and then said, I just saw an atrox and then did a double take and noticed that it was, I totally would have thought that was like there's a lot of really solid mimicry going on there.
My friend Kim, who lives up in Buffalo, New York, I sent her a little thorn scrub that I found in the parking lot of a Jason's Deli in the middle of the city, right? It was just there, right? Like it was literally, I was like walking, I was like, that looks like a snake. And I was like, that's a snake. And so I went and grabbed it. And like, what do you do when you find a snake? You're just like, yay. And then you're like, I'm going to relocate you to my collection. And then now I'm going to feed you. And now I'm going to send you to somebody else. But okay, so we're talking about Melomorum. Melomorum, out of all of these, the Emoryi complex go through the biggest ontogenetic change because as babies, they have a very light ground color, very dark saddles. But then as they age, they start getting these new kind of nuanced stripes on them along the dorsal, which is really weird because it's kind of faint. But if you ever take a Melomorum shed and hold it up to light, you won't necessarily see the saddles, but you'll see the stripes. So it's it's kind of a neat thing that I've noticed with them. To me, Melomorum are my favorite in the complex. One, because they're my backyard heroes, but also just because how tough they have to be to live here. I've had plenty of Christmases at 85 degrees. I've had plenty of Christmases at 2 degrees. South Texas, Corpus in particular, hurricanes, right? Like we eat up hurricanes like they're Skittles. Like we're number 2 to Florida to getting just railed by hurricanes. Yeah. And it's like these animals, Atrox, checkered garter snakes, Splendida,
Melomorum.
Well, bear and I aren't this far west, but
in general, having been there, boy,
can't get them in there.
That's tough. It's a tough place to live.
Look at how Lintemeri do here, right? Like but also Lintemeri do not, similar size snake, similar shitty attitude, do not interbreed with thorn scrubs. No. We'll find them on the same road. Not that we road cruise because that's illegal in Texas. Would never do that, but you'll find them in the same pasture under the same tent. You'll find them cohabiting, right? They'll be under the same piece of tin because that's the prime spot where heat was perfect for them to metabolize, and they do not interbreed at all.
Where is Fort? Is it Fort Hood? Is that in Texas?
Fort Hood. Why my brain? Fort Stockton is in Texas. Fort Hood, I thought it was in Florida. I
could be wrong.
Am I dumb? I'm also dumb.
No, so, I'm pretty sure Fort Hood is in Texas. I just don't remember where.
Yeah, Fort Hood in Texas. I'm looking at it right here. Bell and Coryell counties.
I'm looking at it on a map. Oh, it's up in Killeen, and yeah. So that's much more north of here.
Much north. Yeah. They did a study there where they put transmitters in these snakes, and they were actually studying Texas rat snakes, and I guess it would have been Emoryi up there. But they found that the snakes were that the Emoryi were much more opportunistic than the Texas rat snakes. Texas rat snakes were like dialed into one habitat that they were using. The Emoryi would just go wherever the hell. Like if there were the rodents are over there, we're going over there. And if they're over here, they're going over here. And that's kind of why Emoryi, I think, has the distribution that it does. Species. It's just because when I collected them in Kansas, that's the only place that I've actually field collected any of these guys. I don't have a Selinsky eye or a Melomorum yet on my field list or life list, but I thought it was really cool because I did that whirlwind tour of Kansas around this time last year to find Western hognose snakes, which we did not find. We found every other freaking snake but them. But the Emoryi, we found them I found them road cruising in high prairie. I found them in underneath these really cool chalk boulders near Hayes.
Yeah.
We found them on the road during the day, at night, just like you were saying. They were just kind of there. And what we didn't find, which I thought was really cool, even though they were around, were rat snakes. So whatever the hell.
Obsolete complex, yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, it's kind of neat because over here where I'm at, you just find black rat snakes. That's it.
Just everywhere. So, because black rat snakes are just bulletproof, just amazing animals. Melomorum also kind of, let's say you find an Emoryi in West Texas, or not even West Texas, you just go, west of here. You start finding Emoryi. They usually have a very calm disposition. They're usually, I'm a snake. I'm a rat snake. Let's do this. I've never found a Selinsky eye. I know a few people that have. They're always smaller, which is weird because in captive collections, they get the same size as Emoryi, but they're usually just a smaller snake. Mille morum, man, you're gonna bleed every time, and it's so funny because I have wild caught mille morums, I have F1 mille morums, I have F3 mille morums, I have a ton of mille morum in my collection.
That doesn't go away.
Oh no, it does. None of mine are. I could have my wild caught. I have a really neat aberrant McMullen male and a female that was found same night, same area, and John found them, and I've had them for I guess 2 or 3 years. I'm going to be breeding them next year, and they're like the calmest snakes on the planet. They're so chill.
That's not my.
And
that's not my experience either. But
I don't know. I may just keep my collection colder than everybody else. I don't know what it is, but like even my Pituophis. Now my black pines, look, if you got black pines, they're just built. They're built a certain way. They're not. You can hold them. You can hold mine, but they're not happy.
They're non-venomous.
No, they're not happy ever.
Yeah, they're just not happy.
They're grumpy old men, man. They're my. I actually love them.
Yeah. Oh, I love.
On that same token, I know it's not Emoryi, but thanks to you, Chris, when I hatched out what I thought were, I can't say this, Lajitas.
It's like Lajitas, but it's Lajitas.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Lajitas gopher snakes.
Yeah, sure.
And then you were like, oh, that's a forks. I was like, wait, what? And then I went down a deep rabbit hole with that and immediately bought super forks and all that.
Sure.
Those things, man.
They're demons.
I have them in Vivs in the garage. They're the only snakes I've ever owned that they come out of their hides to bite the glass.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they just like, and then they go back in.
Yeah.
It's crazy. My son hates them.
Yeah.
Every day he cleans them out and he's like, these things are going to eat my face, Dad. I'm like,
oh my God. And you have to clean them every day.
Yes.
You have to clean them. They spray shit. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So they're perfect for me.
we'll use this as so Brewster County is very large. Brewster County is kind of the other side of the armpit of Texas. That's all the east coast of Big Bend. It goes all the way down to Lajitas and the River Road, and it goes all the way up to Marathon. It kind of cuts at Marathon, but Joseph Forks, who's an avid herper, longtime Pituophis, and has bred many awesome Alterna and stuff. He found that some of these snakes genetically, if bred together, had an actual super form, and that's where the Forks gene. We call it the Forks gene because he's the one that figured it out. And I sent you the website. And then the super Forks, which is essentially patternless animal. We can call it a patternless animal. It's also, if you breed a super Forks to a normal gopher, you'll get a kind of diversity of intermediate Forks genetics, different phenotypes, sure. And it was kind of funny when it's not kind of funny, it's very interesting. He figured that out. And then people were like, wait, so if I take this funky looking one from down here in the Christmas Mountains or this funky looking one from Lajitas and I breed it to another one, I'm going to get patternless animals. And they literally did it and they proved it out as these genetics are in the wild. But as far as I know, there's never been a super form found in the wild. They have found in the wild some that have, so we call it, we find them in the wild and they have that kind of funky speckling and patterning. We call them the Forks gene. And it acts kind of like the ultra granite in Mex, where is it co-dominant? Is it incomplete dominant? Is it any of that? Or is it just a line bred trait, right? So if I take two Forks gene gophers and breed them together, maybe I don't get any super Forks, but I get some that are closer. But maybe I do get super Forks, and then I get totally normal animals. So, and again, I am not it doesn't work on the same spectrum of Mendelian genetics as simple recessive does. And kind of anything that starts clicking outside of the dominant, co-dominant, simple recessive kind of gets muddled. Is this line breeding? Is this 12 different alleles that have to line up just right to make this happen? And it's so much more complex than we kind of take it inherently. But regardless, so you have these Lajitas animals, which if anybody's looking for a good vacation, go stay at the Lajitas resort, go drink at the Thirsty Goat.
Pet their mare.
Yeah, there's go pet the mayor, who's a goat. The mayor of Lajitas is a goat.
Oh, shit.
Clay Henry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I got to pet him. I got a picture with him.
And then there's also the Prada store, which is a little phone booth size store that says, I think, Prada on it, and there's nothing in it. And it's just you drive by it going down there. And anyways, there's a bunch of tech. I mean, goddamn, Texas is just the best state there ever was, ever will be. But yeah, so that was a long way to say that, yes, yeah, the Pichiophis
No,
are
I like them a lot.
Sonorans are special. Anyways, back on
well,
backtracking.
The only Emoryi that I have are Brewsters. Now, a lot of people have Brewsters, but I like that.
Brewster County.
That now, granted, but it's a huge county.
Yeah.
So
and you'll find a lot of Brewster County.
Where is that in relation to Nueces?
So Nueces County, if I'm leaving Nueces County and I'm going to Brewster County, it's 8.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
So Justin, you've been there. You know, Alpine is kind of in the middle of the tail. So go to Marathon, and then from Marathon, 385 a little bit south is Brewster County. So that'll take you down to Black Gap. So everything from Black Gap.
See, we didn't go out to Black Gap when we were there because it was already like 11 o'clock at night, and we wouldn't have gotten there until like 2 a.m. or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like that, so.
But the cool thing is, when you get there at 2 a.m., it's still 90 degrees, and it's fucking
Stone.
weird.
Stone was thinking about it. Stone was like, Stone was pondering it.
Yep.
Yeah. He's like, we can do it. We can be there by midnight.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's so weird. I've been up in the Olympia Canyon, actually up in Madera Canyon, and it was 60 degrees. Cool.
I loved it up
really
there. Yeah,
dude. Bunch of blacktails. We saw the Lepidus on Observatory Road, and then we go down to Black Gap. And it's straight up 90 degrees.
Like tar pit.
Yeah, it's just a tar pit all the way down to La Linda.
Nice.
And it's, it's kind of cool because we keep saying all of these like Observatory Road, Juneau Road. Well, Juneau Road's much more east, but River Road, Christmas Mountains. And it's like people are like, oh, yeah, I've heard that locality. It turns out these are really great herping spots if you want to spend night after night after night after night looking at nothing. But
that sounds like that. Yeah, I've done a lot of that herping here in Appalachia. That's kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
We don't have tons of. You have to work to get snakes here in West Virginia.
Nueces County, here where we're at, Nueces County, McMullen County, obviously we do a lot of herping here. You find a lot of snakes, a lot of atrox, a lot of garters, occasionally mealmorum. There's a couple other species that are a little more, but people are like, oh man, those McMullen annulata are just amazing. And it's like, yeah, I found me and John, I was with John, found an annulata McMullen last year. It's also like the only one that was found between us two, having gone there for many nights. It's a rarity to find a lot of these animals. And then you start thinking about Alterna in West Texas.
Subox.
Subox. Well, Subox on Black Gap are kind of like Snickers bars on Halloween night, right?
Really?
Yeah, you're probably going to find a Subox on Black Gap. It's probably going to happen.
That's interesting. What about Emoryi, though? Are they relatively common if you're out in that part of the world?
They are. They're way less common south. So the more north you go, if you're in West Texas, and let's say you're herping in Alpine, and you're going Alpine and then north, you're going to find them a lot more in the kind of Olympia Canyon area, Marathon, the 385. Everybody knows about the Brewster County split in Marathon. A lot of Emoryi in that area. I say a lot. We say words like a lot with herping, and it's like it's much more common than a lot of the other things that you find. But the night that you find a Tantilla, a black-headed Rio Grande. Oh man, I'm forgetting on the common name, but you're probably going to find two Emoryi. The night that I found an Alterna, I think we found 2 or 3 Emoryi. Right? Like if snakes are moving, you're going to find the much more common species because they're so much more diverse, right? They're so much more, there's almost a comfort to the animal. Like it knows that I can get out of my little crack and I can go across the street and maybe I sleep in a hollow of a tree or a log or something.
So have you found them when you're like shining a cut, or is it more on the road?
Personally, I've never found one shining a cut, but I know they're found all the time, shining cuts.
Gotcha.
Definitely have never found one while driving on the road, but if I was driving on the road, I feel like I would find them more often.
No, the first one I found in Kansas, I flipped it. We had just gotten up around Hayes, and that's where Hayes, Kansas is just a badass place to herp because there's these chalk canyons, literally chalk. It was like the bottom of the ocean in the Cretaceous. So, and the big chalk boulders fall down, and then you flip them. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, Christ, hills, because I'm from West Virginia and have been in the prairie for like 4 days. And immediately looked at a rock. I was like, there's a snake under that rock. And I took my student Aaron over, and I was like, we're going to flip it and we're going to catch it. And when I flipped it, the first thing I thought of when I saw it was it's an Eastern milk. Like that's what, that's what Emoryi looked like to me at like that face glance. And then it was like, oh wait, this is definitely not a milk. And then I got, super jazzed because that was one of my targets.
Yeah.
So,
man, after you talked about Kansas and going there though, like it really does. Like that's not a state that a lot of people I think would associate with herping,
no.
but
I would love to.
Way more going
Kansas
on there.
Kansas is worth going.
I heard Kansas and Nebraska are like pretty awesome. I'd love.
The thing that's
to go
cool about herping Kansas is that it's the only place I've been that you road cruise during the day. You don't road cruise at night. So you get up and you just start driving, and the snakes start getting active right around 74 degrees, and then they'll and it gets to be 74 when we were there. I don't know if this is normal by like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd start. Now, granted, I'm a cheap date when it comes to road cruising because I like nature scenes. So red-sided garter snakes, ribbon snakes, Rhodia. I'm just as jazzed about those guys as I am.
Oh yeah,
a pit viper or whatever. But it was like relatively constant all day. Bull snakes. We didn't see all the Emoryi we saw were actually, now that I think about it, at night. They were not during the day if we saw them. Coach whips. Those were a blast. Yellow racers. But that's all during the day. And then evening hits and there's like a change. And that's when the Viridis show up, the prairie rattlers.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
Those are badass.
And then in southern Kansas, we got on Massasaugas, which was like extremely badass.
It's actually pronounced Massasawa.
Massasawa.
It's a Massasawa. I don't know that for a fact. I'm a.
Well, I like that better. It's a little fancier. So.
I've always been told it's Massasawa.
That makes more sense. We should anglicize. So anyway, but no, I found more snakes in that week than any other trip I've ever done in my life.
That's badass.
Gentilis. So like the thing that was crazy at Great Plains Milks is that you're driving like around Hayes, you just drive it and there's freaking cuts everywhere. And Alex Schmacht was with me. He's a herp nerd.
Yeah.
And
I'm talking about Boyga.
Yes. He has the Boyga I made, I gave to Alex. So there you go. But Alec was from Colorado, and he was like, hey, we need to stop and hit these cuts. And we don't do cuts in Appalachia. It's a good way to die. So
explain that real quick. Just so
they're much taller, and they're not natural. So our
cuts aren't either.
But our rocks are like, they're not, we have rolling gentle hills. We don't have canyon walls. Okay. So you flip something at the bottom of the hill, and then the shit above you comes raining down on top of you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not fun. So I was like, okay. And like, I think that we got out in the first cut that we hit. He had a Great Plains milk in like 10 minutes flat. It was, and I don't normally get to see it's not a true tricolor milk, but it's pretty damn close.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty badass. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we found another one, and then we found another one, and then legless lizards were freaking everywhere. I mean, it was just
nice.
The only thing we did not find, I'm not bitter at all, was that goddamn Western hognose snake. And then we left, and within 24 hours, our guide was like, yeah, the herpers got 2. I was like, all right, cool. That's fan-freaking-tastic.
See, what's interesting on hognose, and now I've never found one in West Texas because most of what I've done in West Texas is look for alterna. I'm pretty keyed in. Like I'm going at specific times to specific places. But I have heard that on certain roads, specifically one road in particular in West Texas, you can cruise very early in the night, before the sun's still up, and that's where you find your Kendleri.
Yep.
And a lot of them are found in Brewster County. In fact, I had a trio of Brewster counties that I bought that were from wild F1s, and I sent them to Ryan Cox, and he actually bred them the year after I sent them to him. and I think his babies were doing all right. I bought mine out of the egg, and I got to experience the whole. I love buying stuff that doesn't want to eat out of the egg.
Yes.
I like the complexity of it.
I don't like that at all.
There's
no part of me that likes that, Chris.
I don't know what it is about trouble feeders that I like. It's almost like I want to un Rubik's Cube you. And me and John talk about this all the time because John's like, you're an idiot. You're actually dumb. Like, and I'm like, I don't know why. And maybe it's because I haven't bred them for many, many years. I've only got a couple years into breeding Alterna and stuff. But I love trying to figure out the idiosyncrasy of that particular animal because they're all different. But the Brewster County animals I sent to Ryan Cox bred, and I need to check back on with them.
I think this is small world time because I'm pretty. Yeah. If that's the trio he just bred, is that it? Yeah, I just bought those. Those are coming here.
No.
There you go.
I have the full lineage on those animals, and
cool.
Where they were, the parents were caught. Those actually originated from Joseph Forks.
Cool.
Small world again.
Yeah.
I got those babies from him right out of the egg, and they're tiny. It's so funny. Mexican hogs are little.
No, they're actually my target for next year. Is for the book. I gave up on. Well, I can't have platyrhinos, which is the easterns.
Yeah.
And then I actually did pull the trigger on Simis, which are insanely expensive. And then they were doing great, and then they died, and then I cried a lot. And I was like, okay, I'm done. But have you not
ever found an eastern?
Well, I found easterns.
Okay, because we get easterns here in Nueces County.
Yes. That was supposed to be my master's thesis, and we didn't find any. And no. Well, that's a story for another day. But no, I've got Eastern's the only one of the genus that I've found in the wild, but that is going to change next year.
So do you need Easterns?
What? No,
I
can't keep Easterns because of the West Virginia rules.
Okay, probably not a bad rule to have native snakes and stuff. I'm not one of those people that completely hates it. Well, if I wasn't allowed to have Texas snakes, I'd be a very sad young man.
Yes, but I'm fine with the Masochist, and I already had I had 2.2 Mexicans that I have battled with and got into adulthood, and then I picked up a couple ladies this year as well to add to my group, and then Ryan asked me if I wanted those, and I was like, yes, I will purchase those from you, sir. So
I'll have to give Ryan a little bit of a hard time, but I'm glad that they're in good hands. Those little snakes, I've still got my little feeding techniques. Next thing we're going to talk about is going to be Emoryi Morphs. I sent Justin a couple pictures. But yeah, the fun thing about Mexicans is they're small, they breed early, and my little trick to them that did really, really well with my Mexicans was keep them cooler, much cooler. 78 to 80. So many things in the West, whether it's Alterna, whether it's Sonoran gophers, whether it's just anything that's from that area, does not move when it's 110 degrees. Atrox do. Gophers probably do. But now Emoryi are different. Emoryi are the tanks of the West. Your coach whips keep them hotter. Your snakes like that. Your snakes that can show an obvious higher amount of metabolism. But your slower snakes, your smaller snakes, keep them cooler. Alterna, keep them cooler. You're going to have better success with them. It takes a little bit longer, but they show in leaps and bounds progression when kept at cooler temperatures. I am Justin Julander said it in the Green Tree Python book. Cooler, feed them less, less wet, right? Like those three things: less humidity, less food, less temperature. And I truly believe that's true with desert species. That's true with montane species. That's true with high humidity. Anything that lives in an environment that sucks. I don't know what it is, but those things click.
I definitely agree with the less humidity for sure.
Yeah,
because I've noticed that with the bull snakes that I've kept here, I have a lot of humidity in this house, and it's hard to herd a bull snake. And I was herding a lot of them. I was like, what the hell is going? This doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah.
And then I just added a shit pot of ventilation to the tubs. And as soon as I did that, boom, they were perfectly back in great shape and growing and thriving. And now I've kind of figured them out. But I did the same thing with the Kennerly.
I have super humidity, right? Like I'm 500 feet from the Oso. I'm 60%, 65% in my house at all times. So my battle is keeping the humidity down.
Mm-hmm.
Down in my reptile room. And I do that through fans, ventilation, air purifier at max blast. Like you get in that room and it sounds like a tornado is just going off. But it's working. There's been species that I have failed with exceptionally well, right? Like I have absolutely just shit on Baja rat snakes. I will say that for the rest of my life. I've got $2,000 worth of Baja rats in my freezer right here. Cool ass snakes, not for me. Subox, not for me. Nephurus, not for me. Nephurus Initiative, shout out Phil. What's up, dog?
There you are.
But anyways, back on the Emoryi complex. Let's. I know we're tangenting, which is what we do. So back on the Emoryi complex, I wanted to kind of dip a little bit into morphs.
Yep.
And I don't know how familiar y'all are with the morphs.
I only know Silverleaf.
Now that's
Slowinsky.
Yeah,
and that's
Slowinsky, yeah.
So this is all you, man. And I think there's an albino Emoryi, if I'm not mistaken.
There is.
Yeah.
So the Emoryi complex is really interesting with its morphs. There are morphs that are specifically indicative to each of the subspecies. So in I have pictures of all of these because I've owned all of them. What we're looking at here, so this is an Emoryi complex, Emoryi, just Emoryi. I said complex, sorry. This is a chocolate Emoryi. So the chocolate morph is kind of interesting because if you look at that, you don't really see a lot of Great Plains rat snake. And it's a pattern morph as well as a color mutation. With this color mutation, we see a lot more iridophores, I think is the correct term. There's a lot more rainbowing going on in the scalation. The kind of pattern starts getting a lot smaller. And also you have this very brown snake, almost like a melanistic animal, but it's weird. If that was an increased amount of melanin, why would you not have more color in the saddles? It's almost like the base color just gets browner. It's kind of interesting. I think that something in this mutation increases erythrin and melanin because with that increased red and black, you kind of get that chocolate color, and then you get that very, very rainbow. They're extremely you take them out in the sun and they look like a rainbow just all over them. It's really neat. So that's a chocolate, and with chocolates you also have chocolate albinos. So in Emoryi we have chocolate, we have albino, we have the albino also in Emoryi is not compatible with the albino in corn snakes. So if I take an albino Emoryi and I breed it to an albino corn snake, you do not get an albino animal. It's kind of interesting. It's its own strain of albino, I suppose, when you're hybridizing the two. But what's very interesting was that scaleless actually came from an Emoryi. The first wild-caught scaleless in that complex was an Emoryi, immediately bred into corn snakes. And so all of your scaleless corn snakes are actually hybrids. They have some amount of Emoryi blood in them to hold that gene. Also found in Emoryi is there is an anary gene, and there is also, which is, it's kind of funny, an anary Emoryi kind of looks like an Emoryi. It's kind of one of those like genetic mutations that is never going to take off or ever be anything because it's pretty damn standard, right? It kind of looks like it looks. And then we also have a hypo that came up probably within the last 6 or 7 years, I believe. Most of these were found in Central Texas or North Texas. So there's a hypo. The hypos are really neat looking. Man, they almost look like a Caligaster, right? I guess this chocolate kind of looks like a Caligaster. But the hypo Emoryi, and I don't have any hypo Emoryi, they're very uncommon. Only a couple people really work with them. But there is a hypo gene. So all of these genes that we found so far in Emoryi are simple recessive. They all work with standard Mendelian genetics. And then so the next picture is going to be a thorn scrub. So Justin, that is a Nueces County F3 reverse stripe thorn scrub. And so these were originally bred by Toby Brock. I don't remember who found the original reverse stripe animal, but the reverse stripe that was found in the wild is perfect. It is literally every line is connected together, and it was just, I mean, textbook perfect. What you would say as a reverse stripe animal. and that was bred to a normal. Excuse me, 1 second. Bred back to a normal wild caught animal to make F1s, and the F1s had some aberrancies and some reverse striping going on, and so they've line bred them back to get to this kind of. So this, like I said, an F3. Toby Brock and John Lasseter have worked with these guys for many years. To get an F3 from a wild caught animal is a lot of work. That's a lot of years. That's 9+ years to get it there. And these guys have done all this work to get these beautiful reverse stripe thorn scrubs that do a very good job of eating. They're all very calm and tame, which is kind of neat. But this particular animal is I'm going to be working on, and now I'm going to do a little bit of sacrilege. Up until 2 years ago, these were all the same species. So my plan is to take these genetics and put it into all the other morphs. So we have our albinos, our chocolates, and we're going to see what does this line bred trait do when it starts pairing back to other genetics, and then hopefully we can get an albino reverse stripe and a chocolate reverse stripe. I'd love to get hypos in the mix. We'll see where that goes. And then some anaries, because the snows are beautiful. Snow Emoryi, which is a combination of albino and anary, are just gorgeous animals. They're sharp. They have a clean pattern. Travis Whistler works with them, produces a few every year. But it's something. It's kind of a subsect of morphs in the hobby that's constantly overlooked. I think these snakes are all overlooked, right? Yes, Emoryi can be a little bit testier. They're definitely more robust than corn snakes. They're a little bit more cantankerous. They have a little bit more personality, but some of those things can also be looked at as benefits, right? You have something with a little bit more action in its life and a little bit more attitude to it, which can be good and bad, depending on how you look at it. So this is the reverse stripes. If I bred that to a wild caught animal, I would start getting muddling from the first generation, but it does take a series of line breeding to get it to a stripe that's as good as this. And there are others out there that are better, but what's weird is we constantly find aberrant thorn scrubs, but they're usually more of a jawbone H pattern, which we think may actually be leading towards this, because even within the last 2 years, somebody found a perfect stripe McMullen County thorn scrub. So I don't know what happened with that animal. I wasn't involved, didn't know the guy, but he found about a 5-foot adult male that was just a perfect stripe, reverse stripe. So yeah, it's kind of some of the more interesting things that some of us in this little hovel of our hobby are working with. And then, so looking at Slowinski eye, I wish I had some pictures of Slowinski eye, but so in Slowinski eye, there are also 2 recessive traits. So that's going to be silverleaf, which is very, very similar to the Sunkiss mutation, but works very differently. It does have a little bit of hypoing to it. It does have a little bit of head pattern diffusing to it, but the silverleaf blows out the pattern on the snake. It looks like somebody took a eraser on a dry erase board and just erased the parts of the snake that, anyways, they're very variable. And then also in Slowinski eye, they have their own line of anary. So we have Slowinski eye anaries. We have true Emoryi eye. Well, I say true Emoryi. I guess they're all Emoryi now. How you follow genetics, but there are Emoryi eye anaries. So in kind of my camp, we follow the thorn scrubs and Emoryi eye are kind of very similar, and if those 2 are much closer, and Slowinski eye are more their own species because they're so much different than the other 2.
Yep.
I was a little more accepting, of Milmorum being lumped into Emoryi eye than I necessarily am about the 3 being subspecies. I still think Slowinski eye are their own species, if not all 3 just being their own species. But then again, I have the genetic intelligence of a feather, right? So I don't get to make those decisions. I'm not the scientist.
No.
So yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
No. So with the silverleaf, I still have yet to actually see that. So it does it make the saddle pattern just pop? because the male I have is according to legend het silverleaf.
Okay.
But it has the normal phenotype because that's what I tend to like. And then the thing that's really funny about me is I buy all these hets because I'm like, oh, I'm just getting a normal phenotype. Forget that they're hets. Most people remember that they're hets. Then I breed them together. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And that's how I got albino San Diego gopher snakes this year.
That's why you write it down in the book, Dr. Loughman.
That's right. So anyway, but no, like, so does it? Well, what's the origin? Do you know the origin of the term silver leaf? Like why they're called that?
I wish I did, and I wish there was a little bit more. That's one thing that's kind of rough about the Emoryi complex. Is a lot of people have been working with these animals since the 80s, right? There's line bred traits. We've got recessive traits. We know that these things exist. We know that they exist in collections, but there's just not a lot of meat out there for us to cook a steak with. Gotcha. And that's stuff. I'm actually going to pull up a picture of a silver leaf and send it to Justin. I sent my silver. So I had a silver leaf and a pair of het silver leaves, also het anary, that I sent to Ryan Cox. So let me get that to y'all now. If y'all want to chitter chatter while I dig up pictures.
I'm trying to figure out how to make this zoom in better.
What is that a picture of, Justin?
That's that one aberrant-ish.
Oh.
And you see how that reverse striping is almost starting?
Yeah, that is cool.
Move.
All of mine are just as normal can be.
Here we go. Yeah, so it's got all these like little H's.
That's cool.
Oh,
that's super cool.
And
that's because the male.
This one has not eaten yet, and this is a male.
Do you have a picture of the male I sent you?
I'll have to dig for one. I think so. Let me look.
This is bad for podcast air.
Yes.
Look at the video as we dig through these pictures.
Very much so.
I'm bad about that when I'm looking for pictures. I should. So yeah, the silver leaf mutation is a very, very. I sent mine to Ryan Cox, which I hope he has success with them. They're really neat. They have if we akin it back to corn snakes, #CornStars, it has kind of a sun-kissed cinder look to it.
Interesting.
This is bad air, Justin.
Yeah. No.
What?
I know locality-wise, when it comes to Slowinski eye, our good friend Chris Montross has.
Oh yeah.
A couple locality-specific animals. I have a couple of his growing up right now.
Yeah, he's worked with a specific parish of
Kasahachi or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm probably butchering that. Sorry, Montross.
That's okay. It's probably a French word, and we just don't say French words.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
But he works with a specific parish of Slowinski eye that are gorgeous. If you want to talk about mahoganies, oh my gosh, they make you sweat with color. And it's kind of funny. I got rid of my Slowinski eye, not because I disliked them, but just because I wanted to make sure that what I was focusing on was what I was focusing on, which also changes daily because I suck at focusing on literally anything. But for me, the Emoryi complex, but trying to add to my project of Emoryi, stuff that will be able to mix in and that's important for me. Kind of miss those Slowinski eye.
Here's a question. There's the Captain Obvious reason why Emoryi is not kept that much, or as frequently as corns, which is they're drab in comparison. Is it that, or do they have a reputation that kind of precedes them? I was always kind of told that they could be a little nippy, snippy. They were kind of like the corn snake's big bad brother.
I'm not going to find these pictures, and I feel bad. I should have had this prepared. But you're right. So I, in my experience, I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true.
It's sample size, right? I've had plenty of corn snakes that were nippy and gripey and aggressive feeders and would come flying out of the tub, just like I've had Emoryi complex stuff But now if you came into my collection, I could, am I going to open my Chinese beauties in front of you without a hook? No, I'm not going to do that because I know that species is going to fly out at me. And when they bite, they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the same with my black pines. My black pines, I'm probably not going to open up like a careless, hairless monkey. But any of my Emoryi complex and Guttatus complex stuff, I treat the exact same way. There's this weird human interaction, right? Like we have to add this whole human interaction to them. With Pitiophis, fast and deliberate. Those would be my two ways to say to deal with Pitiophis. If you are fast and deliberate, they will not care, right? Pull open the Pitiophis tub. You got a nasty gopher snake. Be fast, deliberate. Pick it up, do your thing, get it out, move it to the cleaning tub, clean out its tub, and it's okay. They have this whole posturing and this whole attitude.
Mm-hmm.
They've got this 90s wrestler thing to them, right? They've got to pump up. They got to, ooh, this is the best you've ever seen, brother. And if a Pitiophis doesn't do that, it's probably not going to bite you, right?
Yeah.
But with the Guttatus and Emoryi complex, that's the wild caught that I sent to Justin. That's the one that little boy I found on the phone with him. Gorgeous snake. But with these Guttatus Emoryi complex animals, if you're slow and you kind of let them know that you're not the threat, not that they have any more beans in their rice than the Pitiophis, but there's a little slowness to it. There's a little methodology to it that and they're chill. They're fine, right?
Yep.
You move slow with them. You're calm. You don't give them any warning signs, and it's okay. Whereas if you don't let Pitiophis get racked up and sauced and getting they got the mic in their hand. If they don't get there, they don't care. They're just like, all right, I'm a snake. I'm going to be a snake in your hands. That one of those pictures Justin just showed was a very good example of that striping that you see on the Emoryi or specifically the thorn scrubs. That kind of deep faded stripe. It's just there, right? It's in the ground color, and it's neat. But also look at the environment these animals are in. They call them thorn scrubs because they're usually found under thorn bushes, very low. We don't get trees here, right? Like we get palm trees and we get very small, lots of cactus and lots of mesquite trees. We have mesquite trees everywhere here. That's we have more mesquite trees here than we have anything else, which was a low, almost. I think it's actually a bush, a small bush tree, and so that's where you find your thorn scrubs if you find them in the wild, not either road cruising or flipping stuff. But yeah, it's. I don't think they have more of an attitude than corns. I bet baby corn snakes are some of the rowdiest little shits on the planet. They're jumpy, they're nippy, they're freaked out. Baby Emoryi kind of aren't. And look at the size of these things.
Yeah, that's literally pulling them out of the egg box after they've hatched.
They're massive.
It's huge.
They're absolute tanks.
Huge.
They're that animal was designed to come out of the egg sometime between June and August and live until the next June or August, unless you know what I mean.
That's an adaptation to basically you're not going into winter.
Yeah,
without eating. These things are set to go right out of the egg.
They're also set to go into also not winter, right? Like if we have a El Nino year,
keep on going.
Yeah. So this year is La Nina. So this year we're going to have a long winter where it's already starting to cool down. We're already in the low 70s at night, which is crazy for October. And then in El Nino year, it's going to be 80 until December, or possibly 80. Literally been in shorts on Christmas. So these animals are kind of built to be able to just live through all of it, no matter what. Same thing south of the border. You get south of the Rio Grande, your temperature swings kind of north of what would be the Nueve Leon range of mountains. And if you kind of look at their range map, they kind of hug the Nueve Leon mountains and stay east of them, that mountain range, which I guess also fades into the Durango mountain range. I'm not super good with my Mexican topography. Look at that beautiful little animal.
Look at the anger in those eyes.
Yes. Beautiful.
They're gorgeous, and now they lose all of that dark coloring, kind of hypos out as it gets older. To use a layman's term with it, you start to get those greens in the saddles. You start to get that kind of faded brown in the saddles. You get that, a lot of the striping goes away. It starts to kind of fade away into a speckling. It kind of becomes a side subject of the ground color, which is kind of the opposite of corn snakes, which is kind of interesting. Corn snakes kind of color up, whereas the Emoryi complex kind of fades out as it gets older.
Yep.
Yeah, this is that aberrant one again.
Very cool.
Somebody needs to take that male and one of your females and keep them and breed those two together and have an entire project based off of it, because those are county specific. That's its own thing. That right there. That is a
There you go, Justin.
trait. It's a proven trait through breeding. We took a male that was aberrant. We bred him to a wild-caught female that was found on the other side of the city, and we bred them together. And first generation, we get a male with that patterning. So does that mean that every male is going to hold those genetics and have that patterning, or are we going to get F1s that are even crazier, or sorry, F2s that are even crazier? The most exciting thing is when you breed F1 to F1, right? What are you going to get? So I think that's a whole project in itself. Yeah.
They just, man, like when they go for you though, they do it with such
anger and hatred,
just purpose.
Yeah, they're very deliberate animals.
They're swinging for the fences.
Yeah,
whether they hit the ball or not, they're going all out for it.
So as far
babies
as
are no exception.
So breeding on the Emoryi complex, did you guys have both bred corn snakes, both bred thorn scrubs? I think we'll probably see more similarities to corn snakes in Slowinskii and Emoryi, but with the male Morum, what did you guys see that was different in y'all's breeding?
What I noticed was we already talked about it. It was how late they were.
Yeah.
And the thing that was really weird is that I'm pretty positive, because I thought it was funny, that I picked up. I didn't think that mine went. I cooled them. I did the whole thing, and then I don't even remember the hell it was. It was late June, July, and I was pulling them out to do a complete overhaul in the tub, and then I picked up that. My female's kind of big. She's not monstrous, but she's definitely 4.5, 5 feet.
Yeah.
She's in that range.
Good sized animal, yeah.
And I, picked her up with the hook, and then that dangle between tail and hook, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
There are definitely eggs there.
Yeah, it was obvious when mine was gravid. It was very apparent that she was, like, there was no mistake in it.
Yeah. But mine hatched. Mine laid within 2 days of yours in South Carolina, which I thought was really weird. And mine hatched within 2 days of yours in South Carolina, which I thought was really weird.
I think it was a total of 62 days, I think, was the final tally on mine.
No, it was bam, bam. And
and those animals are separated by 100 miles, maybe 80 miles of each other. But it's I sent y'all both y'all's pairs. John Lasser actually collected Justin's female and Dr. Loughman's male. And so I had the male for Justin and the female for Dr. Loughman. In fact, the female that I collected for Dr. Loughman, the night that we found her, we were in our beautiful little spot in McMullen County, and that was John's brand new car that we were driving around in, and I bled all over it because she was not happy to be in my hands.
So she still bites, just so you know.
Yes, they and I have wild caught McMullen animals, and I could go get one right now and put it around my neck. It's just, but it's I also got those as babies, or I found them as no, I did not find them. John found them. They were collected as small animals, yearlings, and they're very years of kind of conditioning. But then again, y'all's have had years of conditioning in the wild. Which
they come from the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, they come from the school of hard knocks, and there's a little bit of attitude. I would almost guarantee you that if you raised up your babies, you're going to get a much more corn snake-like animal, right?
I think so far that's not the case.
No. But I've got corn snakes that'll lose their mind.
My neonates are bitey, but I'm going to keep at least a trio from them. I haven't even really looked at them. I mean, I feed them and everything. Yeah. I haven't gone through them yet. The way that I set up all my baby colubrids is that they just all go into one tub. and then I drop a pile of pinkies in there with them all together because I'm of the opinion that competition makes them eat.
Okay.
In this whole isolating them bullshit, I think it stresses them out and all that kind of crap. But I've had just really good luck at my house and at the school where we separate everybody out to keep data. It's like a nightmare to get them started. But the thorn scrubs were funny because I pull open their tub, they're all in there, and they're like all immediately like looking right at me.
Yeah.
And I'm moving in to drop their first batch of pinkies, and it's just like freaking Medusa's head, just like bam, 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 like they're all just trying to bite me. And I drop the pinkies, and I come back like every half hour. All of them, I don't know, some of them I've eaten twice, but every pinky gone in half an hour at first feeding.
Yeah.
Jesus God, these things are easy. Like this is nice.
I've had all of mine I've eaten so far except for that one aberrant one.
Except for the cool one, right?
Yeah.
So my school of thought on raising the neos is different, and Dr. Loughman, I hope you don't take that as me saying
I don't take it.
any of this.
Diversity spice of life, man.
My neos, all of my neos for almost every species with the exception of Pitchophis are set up a specific way. Very deep substrate, a hide that actually goes the full length of the tub. Again, this goes back to the Church of Lassiter kind of school of thought. I have a hide on the cool side. I have a hide on the hot side. I have a deep substrate.
In St. Lassiter we trust.
It's St. Lassiter we trust. But I've had full success with everything. I'm actually 100% this year on feedings. And I do that for corn snakes. I do it for Alterna. I do it for Leonis. And I individualize every animal, and I don't feed anything the day it sheds. I know I heard Matt Most talk about I feed things before they've even shed and deli cups and stuff, and I'm like,
see,
wow,
I've tried. Every time I've tried that, I've never had something take. Doesn't matter what species it was.
You could almost say that, like, man, I know that doesn't work. But then you stop and say, man, that guy produces
the man.
thousands of animals.
Well, no, it's Matt doing it.
Yeah.
And that's like the hand of God when it comes to colubrids doing it.
There's and that's one thing that I truly love about this hobby. We don't get to say anything doesn't work, right? Because there's a guy that does it, first off, better than you. And second off, he does it completely different than you. And it works out in such a rotated way that so it's almost like questioning everything you believe, right? So for me, I isolate. I keep them quiet. I keep my hatchlings in a different area. And so I think that once they've got that, so now they're secluded, now they're hidden, now they're happy, now that food item is introduced. I introduce my food items in a specific way, in a specific area, and I got so lucky. And I will assure y'all, I would rather be lucky than good, right?
Yeah.
I would much rather be lucky than good. And even with Alterna, I've had I'm 100% on Alterna for multiple years running. And yes, there is scenting involved. Yes, there is boiling involved. Yes, there's things involved with Alterna that they're not rat snakes. But even with rat snakes, I've got this method. It works. But for me, it is individualizing. For me, it is creating hides on cool side and hot side. Deep substrate. All these animals love deep substrate.
So I do the group thing for like the first 2 or 3 just to get them going. And then I use that to kind of decide, okay, who's robust.
What am I going to do
not
from here?
robust?
Yeah.
And then I move them into the individual setup. And same deal.
I kind of love to hear that. In fact, next year I'm going to maybe take a clutch and try that with that clutch. Maybe it's corn snakes or something. Because that's kind of interesting, right? Like, let's diversify our
you have to watch them, though.
That's the Nerodia way of going about
it. The Nerodia, Thamnophis, garter snake way.
The nature scene way.
Pitchophis, though, they're idiots. If you do that, they will eat each other's heads. Like, the
best way to feed a hatchling Pitchophis is to put it in something that has a mouse in it, and then they're going to eat.
That's it. So
I have in 3, maybe 4 years running with Pitchophis, they either eat frozen thallid off the rip, or they eat a live pinky off the rip. I have never had one that didn't eat, ever, from many species. I can't wait to hopefully someday hatch vertebralis. I've heard they're a lot tougher, but
very good.
So that's whatever. We're deep diving in. We're side crossing into Pitchophis.
Yes.
Hallowed be thy name. You know what I mean? But one of the neat things with Emoryi, and I haven't actually brought this up, but this is something we could talk about with this complex. I cohab almost all my Emoryi. My Selinsky I cohabbed. My Emoryi in certain pairs I cohab. And so the way, decide how you want to feed your animals that are cohab. The biggest thing I could tell somebody that's cohabbing animals, whether it's in a elaborate display cage, which they're going to do great in, they're going to excel in, or it's a simple tub, is one, options. Again, Churchill Lassiter, like give your animals options, give them cold side hides, give them hot side hides, give them a bigger tub or enclosure that they need, right? If you're cohabbing, right? Double, if you have a 20-gallon aquarium for a Emoryi, say you have a Great Plains grass snake and you have a 20-gallon aquarium, it's a great size enclosure for something they're going to have, probably live their life in. Get you a 40-gallon, right? Double the size, and we say this kind of not everybody keeps everything in aquaria, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Get them a black box cage.
Get them a black box.
Get a cage,
a 3 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. I believe they sell those. Radiant heat panel on one side. Maybe you cook it to about 82 degrees. Water
UV
bowl on the cool side.
Other.
Get a little UV on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Get a water bowl on the cool side.
Put a shelf in there.
A cool side hide.
Well,
a hot side hide. Nice deep substrate, and you can have a pair of I kept my trio of Selinsky together.
You could keep a pair of thorn scrubs very comfortably in one of the XT4s without a doubt.
What size is an XT4?
That's the 4x2x2.
Oh, 4x2x2, yeah.
That's what I just put the Ackies in, and that is. Yeah. I mean, that's what I have the Janseni in, and they're doing fine. So
I think a 4x2x2 this size enclosure.
You could do a lot with that too, just in terms of like how you have it set up, and using all that vertical space between the floor and the ceiling. And
that's one of the cool things about these animals is you could be as elaborate as you wanted, and even with thorn scrubs, which are much larger, would do great in there. And the cool thing, like Dr. Loughman was talking about earlier, corn snakes and Emoryi are not that diverged of each other. I don't know if that's a word. We're going to call it a word. Divergent of each other.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you're going to see a lot of activity. You're going to see these animals during the day. They're crepuscular. You're going to see them in that kind of twilight hours. They make great pets.
It's funny because as soon as I do lights out, usually I walk back in just to do a double check before bed.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's in their tubs. And all of them, like all the thorn scrubs, all the beards, all the corns, everything's moving. Everything. If I didn't see it at all day long, as soon as I turn the lights out and come back in, an hour, half hour later, everything's just out and about. Moving.
Yeah. It's one of those kind of interesting situations. I go in my room, lights are going down. The Pitchophis are starting to move. The rat snakes are starting to move. The obsolete is starting to move. The Emoryi is starting to move.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what's not moving? Alterna don't move when the sun's going down. But if I go in my room at 3 a.m. and I pop on the lights because I want to see what my dumbass Alternas are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've literally had middle of the night, I hear screaming, and I'm like, oh, what's happening to my daughter? And I go, and my kid's asleep, and I'm like, oh, my leechies. And I go check the reptile room, and they're just, one of them suplexing the other one off the top ropes. And I'll look, and my Alterna are out, and they're doing their thing. And my Angelana's out, and it's doing his thing. My Leonis are all like, what's going on? Why are the lights on? What is this?
Funny.
So, yeah. Emoryi kind of fall into another, but an interesting group of snakes that you can cohab. And I think people, we talk about cohabbing animals, and everybody has this distaste in their mouth. Oh, you don't put two snakes together because they stress each other out. I've been doing it for a long time. I haven't seen any stress.
Yeah. I cohab all of mine. Well, not all of my snakes.
I mean, I don't cohab all of mine either.
Yeah, Selinsky and the thorn scrubs are definitely cohabbing right now.
But I keep the Janseni together, and I think they do better cohab than they do individually. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I couldn't really give an explanation as to why. It just seems to me that they're always sort of hanging out together. They're always kind of, utilizing the same sort of space in terms of hides because they have multiple hide options. And
a lot of papers coming out right now. Now, I'm not saying that all the snakes need to be together, but
put all your Brooks Kings together.
A lot of pit vipers, they're showing that there's social dynamics there where the kids definitely stay with mom, and then the moms hang out together. And then the males will come in not to mate, but just to chill. And garter snakes, there's been a paper that just came out recently, and it was picked up by the press that like snakes have friends. Well, they don't have friends, but they definitely have acquaintances that they like more than other acquaintances, and they're given the chance to hang with these animals over here. And doesn't have anything to do with genetics. Mm-hmm. I read those papers and thought, okay, maybe there's something going on here. And the garter snake people have been doing this for literally ever. Like
since the dawn of time.
But even I know Riley noticed with his mad hogs, that they do better together than they do separately. Like they for whatever reason they just seem to they keep better, they keep easier when you have them together.
Yeah, I grew up in a 900,000 square foot house with me and my mom, my dad, and my sister. Right, we all hate each other. We still hate each other. But in that house, we had doors. We had rooms we could go to. We could close those doors, right? Mm-hmm. And we could be mad at each other in those rooms. But when it came dinner time and Mama cooked beef tips and gravy, we were all sitting at the table, and life was good. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to anthropomorphize snakes and say that that's the situation. But goddamn, if I pull up on a V70 and I have 2 4-foot-long snakes and a V70, which is a 3-foot by 2-foot by 8-inch, I believe, tub. And I'm going to tubs because I tub keep, and I have reasons why I do and how I do that. And I have options. I have options in that tub. I have multiple hides. I have maybe a large dedicated water bowl, but it's a big water bowl. I have a way that I feed them. The way that I feed my cohab animals may be different than the way other people cohab. Nothing but success. My Everglades rat snakes who bred every year have been together since they were born. Right. My North Carolina corn snakes from also Chris Montross, both of these species, been together since they were born, right? And they're good. Diversify your keeping, whether as simple as it may be. Do some certain things that are well within your power, economically not even a crutch, and give them multiple areas. And snakes like Emoryi complex do great. And guess what? Half the time when I go look at them, when I'm looking, bugging them to take pictures because that's what we all do. We grab them out and we take pictures. They're in the exact same place.
Yeah.
They don't have to be in the exact same place, right?
Mine were cuddled up a lot.
Yeah. I've even done in a V70 2 hot side hides, 2 cool side hides, and a water bowl on the cool side. That's where I choose to put it. And then maybe I'd like to take a paper towel rolls and put it perpendicular to what the parallels of the length would be, right? And guess what? 90% of the time I open up that tub and they're the exact same height. And it's not because that's the optimal place to be because the heat's in the back and the cool's in the front, but there's some level of comfort that gets in there.
Yeah. So that's their spot, and that's where they're going to go. And that's what we see when we do the videography experiments, is that they definitely will have preferred hides.
Yeah.
We've gone so far as to literally watch every second the thing is alive for days on end and track it to where it's going. And we find that most snakes would hang out in one part of their enclosure for 60 to 70% of the time. And it was totally random. And I personally feel it's just like you said, that's where that animal wants to be. Yeah. And we're never going to really know why. And we can try to science the hell out of it, but it could just literally be, just likes it here. And that's
what do you guys use to record that for that length of time?
We use video surveillance. So quite literally a
CCTV
series of
kind of thing?
CCTV that goes to a DVR.
Wow.
Yep. And we also use Nest back in the day about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. It would upload to the cloud and you could spend money and it would keep 2-3 months at a time.
Yeah.
And so each camera, we can do that for up to 4 cameras, 5 cameras. So we would run snakes for 2 months, and then you take those snakes out, let the enclosure sit empty for a month to get smells out and all that stuff. And then we run another set of snakes through for the whatever month, however long it is, and then it's empty for another month. It takes for freaking ever.
Oh, I bet.
Nice.
But yeah, no. You learn a lot about how they use a cage, though. I can tell you that.
That's pretty awesome. It's amazing.
All right. No, very cool.
That's awesome that y'all are doing that. Y'all are recording the data, and that's wonderful. So kind of dipping out towards the end of this, we got to ask the age-old question, and this is going to dip back into corn snakes. I don't know how familiar you are with corn snake morphs, but what are your
okay.
so there's two corn snake morphs that are always on the grill. People are flipping them left and right. They don't know if they want medium rare, maybe they want a well done, and they just want to never come to my house. They don't know if they maybe want a little lemon pepper on their chicken. But
gotcha.
Scaleless corn snakes and palmetto corn snakes.
Yes.
Both of these morphs have
polarizing
opinions. Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to ask everybody, what are your thoughts on a scaleless corn snake? And then maybe we can get into after that a palmetto corn snake, or if you want to talk one vice versa above that. What are your thoughts?
I can talk a little bit about both. I'll start with palmettos and I'll end with scaleless because I have more to say about that.
I'm going to mute while we do this.
If I'm not mistaken, so palmettos, there was a period of time where I was actually thinking about this, like I've got to get into this morph thing and just understand it or give it a taste. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. And this is before the regs hit and corn snakes were going to be illegal in West Virginia. And corn snakes were the snake that I was going to do this with. Like I was trying to do a deep dive my way. And I remember distinctly when I saw the first palmetto and I was like, I like that. That's cool looking. And then I started doing the deep dive, and I believe I could be dead wrong. Is an issue with the palmettos that when you breed them, you get bug eyes, or no?
Yeah.
Yes, they're a leucistic type animal.
Yes,
has the same idiosyncrasies as most leucistic type animals, where the scale on the eye doesn't correctly form.
They look dumb as hell. And
so that bug eye thing, I don't like that. So I was like, okay, I just don't like it. I don't like it. It's
great if it's natural, like in subox.
Yes. Yeah, subox supposed to be that way, but in a corn snake or a leucistic Texas rat, I know they do the same thing. I just no. So I don't care if other people do it, but that's not for me. So I didn't really do anything with palmettos. I still think they look neat. I think they're one of the coolest looking morphs out there. But scaleless, that's a whole other conversation for me. So I do it in my own podcast. I've heard other people say it in their podcasts. And there's always this kind of thing where we have our opinions on things, and then we say, you can do whatever you want to do, and blah, 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 we get defensive.
You just had a guest on working with Texas rat snakes.
Yes.
Wonderful episode, by the way.
Oh, yeah, no.
And we actually a predominantly scaleless stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just, scaleless is just not for me. And it's a welfare issue because that is what is gone, obviously, is not just the fact that it doesn't have the scales, but it doesn't have the keratinized layer of skin that is so important for reptiles that literally keeps the water on the inside of the reptile. So with scaleless snake, you're going to always be dealing with dehydration, and the animal is always going to be drier than it needs to be.
It looks itchy. Like it looks like it would just be uncomfortable. I don't know.
That's what I just don't like the idea with scaleless snake.
Yeah.
Its welfare is never, it's never going to be what it could be. And we're doing that intentionally.
There's an argument to be made against that. And that is that historically through the scaleless and corn snakes, keepers have found that because they have some amount of scales, specifically the belly is still scaled.
Yes.
They're fine, right? And I'm saying this more as devil advocate because I don't think I've ever voiced my opinion.
Thank God for Cetaphil.
But no. I know people in many different habitats because every one of our snake rooms or reptile rooms is a habitat, regardless of what any of us think. Just because I have the exact same temp as Dr. Loughman or Dr. Smitty over here does not mean that our habitats are the same. They're not. Barometric pressure has something to do with that. Humidity has something to do with that. Altitude, regardless of barometric pressure, altitude has something to do with it. Swings in weather, obviously that goes back to barometric issues. Everything is a little different, but historically, scaleless corn snakes are just fine, right? They show no deleterious situations. I don't know if that's the right word, but goddamn, I feel smart for saying it.
There you go. Good word.
But So if you were able to exclude all of those things and say no, they're actually just fine, where do you sit?
If there was a way to prove that they are just fine,
Sounds like an
scientifically and
experiment
objectively,
for West Liberty.
I would not have a problem with the scaleless morph.
What about
And that's
scaleless
why-
water covers?
Well, those came
That's
out.
different. They don't have scales. But see, the thing is, with scaleless
can't-
corn snakes, they still have scales. Scaleless water cobras do not have scales at all.
Yes,
They look rather
Yeah.
phallic.
they do.
I
They really
literally see a scaleless water cobra neonate every day, right? Like we all do.
Yeah, there you go. Every single day.
The first
thing in the
leucistic
morning before you go to
ever
bed.
bred.
But back to the scaleless thing though. But at the same time, I absolutely will admit that like I look at this whole thing, and then I have a tendency with myself. I try not to get uppity. I try not to be like pinkies out at ivory.
Academia.
Yes, I don't want to be that guy ever. And then I will ask myself, am I that guy? Because in the end, as fancy as all this shit is, we are keeping snakes in plastic boxes. And we need to remind ourselves that we're keeping snakes in plastic boxes. And if we're keeping snakes in plastic boxes, this is like the same thing as keeping a pug. Like pugs, cute as hell, people like them. Their lives, I'm sorry if you own a
They
pug and you
can't
listen to
breathe.
this.
I have
They
a Boston
suck.
Terrier, so
They can't freaking breathe, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so to me,
that's all the dogs in the
scaleless corn
Brachiocephalus family. Yeah.
yes, corn snake, scaleless corn snake, scaleless Texas rat, scaleless false water cobra. They're the equivalent to a Yorkie, a pug, and a Chihuahua to me.
A
You know,
bulldog. Yeah.
Yeah, they're never gonna. And
A Great
now I will
Dane
say
with
this.
its hips. Yeah.
Yeah, the scaleless snake peeps will latch on to the examples that have been found in nature. There was a picture of that scaleless cobra that showed up like 2 or 3 months ago. They're like, see, this is making it out in nature. But if that was really as common as we think we want it to be, how about that? People will be finding those things. Like, there's literally a picture on social media today of an albino Texas indigo that somebody killed in their yard.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We find albinos all the time. I've seen pictures from the snake groups of patternless copperheads.
Isn't it weird
It
how
seems
they're
like this
almost
every 2
always
weeks.
dead when there's like anomalies out there?
Uh-huh.
Coincidence? I think
But the
not.
scaleless morph is just, I just don't know. Verdict's out. So,
Yeah.
But like using Kevin, I know that I'm about to get some Texas rat snakes that are scaleless when I go to Tinley, and I thought,
Nice.
okay, I'm gonna give let's give this a shot. So, I tend to have to make my own mind up with experience before I will have an opinion, but I will never set for that opinion until I have the experience myself.
I love that. I would love to hear your experienced opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion getting them, looking at them, feeling them, and then I'd love to hear your opinion 3,
I've
4,
never
5
held
years
one.
down the road. Yeah.
But here's something else though that I
Every
want to
day, Smitty, you hold one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we talk about like
Velvety.
palmettos and we talk about the scaleless snakes. But when it comes to these mutations, we are always discussing the phenotype. I've heard Travis Wyman, Dr. Wyman, talk about this. Love Travis.
Yeah.
There are
He's a
so
man.
many gene pairs that are co-adapted with these phenotypes. And we might make, like, there might be some morph of corn snake that we think there's nothing obviously wrong with it. It's not bug-eyed. It's got the scales are right, scutellation's right. It grows at the right rate. Nothing's wrong.
Knows
And
what
we
plane of
make-
existence it's on.
Yeah, but that particular animal, it may not be able to make some enzyme that it needs to digest
Sure.
mouse bones,
Absolutely.
and we'll never know that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it could
Yeah.
actually be living a much horrible existence than the scaleless, which looks horrible to some people, but in reality, if we're giving it its needs, then it's good. So that's why the morph thing to me is so interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more going on than just the pretty paint job.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
know
like
that.
with the palmettos and the scaleless and really any of the morphs, but with those two in particular, I find sort of the story and the mystery behind them more interesting than the actual morph itself.
Mhm.
But that's also why I like Sarah's morph deep dive videos so much, because she goes back and explains like where it came from, when it popped up, with everything, be it caramel, hypo stuff, whatever. I don't know. I find, especially just in the grand, like bigger picture with corn morphs and stuff, I find sort of the story behind it just as interesting as the animal itself. But when it comes to palmettos and scaleless, to me, it's just like the story of the palmetto and whether, how accurate is what we've heard, like that sort of aspect of it and sort of the unsolved mystery part of it.
Yeah.
I find more interesting than the actual morph.
Yeah. It's almost the theology of it.
Kind of, yeah.
Based off of the, and luckily we have somebody like Sarah Moore in this hobby that's doing the research and putting out those videos. And, we've had her on the show twice already, and I'm sure she'll be on many more times. But there is nobody out there that is doing the choreography on these morphs like she does. Like I've said it before, I'll say it again. She does this for free. Remember, she does this as a hobby. Her hobby is putting information into your brain for $0. Actually, it only costs her money because there's equipment, there's time. If anybody ever thinks their time is free, you're wrong, because your time has a dollar value, and you can assess that through math. Figure it out. Get a second job, get a third job, get a fifth job. None of this is free, though it may be relaxing or exciting. But Dr. Loughman, I think I really appreciate your opinion on that. You won't necessarily make a dedicated assessment on that until they're in your hands, till you've really experienced it. I personally, as far as the scaleless go, are kind of like you. I've never had one. They're kind of weird looking. They kind of freak me out. But I won't sit here and say it's a bad thing till I can prove it to myself. Now, yes, the scaleless ball pythons, the scaleless bearded dragons, I think, are scaleless also. Yep. I truly believe that some of these animals are like fucked up, right? Like they're born without the things that are, like
that was eloquently said, and the way I think as well.
Yeah, it's hard to not look at it that way. But then we get these animals. Now, Mother Nature, evolution, has done a better job of sorting out morphs than we ever will. Mother Nature had 1 million years or more to do this for us, right? The reason we don't have a wild population of leucistic alligators who've been around for 65 million years or more. I don't know if any of that's accurate, but I'm going to assume that it is because I said it. I said it on the internet, so now it's true. But 65 million years of alligators, the reason we don't have a leucistic population is because they're not going to survive. Now, that doesn't mean that leucistic alligators, these beautiful white animals, don't do well in captivity and can't reproduce. We've proved that time and time again. But like you said, how many of those are screaming on the inside, right? Please turn off the lights. I literally want to cut my throat, but I can't do it because I'm an animal with 2 brain cells. And I've thought myself in this situation. This year I produced a particular animal that really stood out to me. I produced an ultramel red factor stripe tessera het anary beautiful little snake, and then I produced some red factor ultramel, which ultramel is 2 genes, hypo anary stripe that I actually sent one to Justin. The very complex compound of genes, right? We're talking about 5 or 6 genes going on that are now phenotypical. Obviously, these animals would survive in the wild because I know what bass bait looks like, right? And I know what the fish eat, right? But how far into this hole do we get that with these designer animals? Because that is what they are. They're designer animals, to where we say, okay, but fuck, man, this is straight up just a scaleless snake, right? Like, it's just a scaleless snake, right? I'm just trying to have one animal without scales. And then even at that point, it still has scales. It has rostral scales, it has belly scales, it has neck scales, it has eye scales, which is kind of one of the major factors in all of it. And then we see that compounding that gene, breeding scaleless to scaleless, and then going into the F3s, F4s, which I've kind of started researching a little bit, we're still getting healthy animals. We're getting animals that shed well, that eat well, that start well, that don't show any of those, oh God, I'm going to use it again, y'all just hold on, deleterious genes.
Yeah, there you go. Blown away.
Woo! I mean, I'm pretty much a scientist myself, Dr. Loughman.
There you are.
But let's kind of counterpart that. Let's look at palmettos. Whereas I take this animal that falls on the spectrum of leucism, and if I take a palmetto to a palmetto, most of the time I'm going to get bug-eyed animals. I'm going to get very genetically degraded animals. So but palmettos are widely accepted as just fine, right? Like, oh, it's just
Now,
okay.
do they have a neuro thing? Do they have a wobble or no?
No. So we did have a wobble back in what would be the 80s. The Sun-Kissed had a wobble. It was called we called it stargazing back then. I say back then like I was alive. I was alive in 1985, but Kathy Love was producing Sun-Kissed, which originated out of the Okidi line. Much like we have red zeppelins and we have albinos and stuff that came from the Okidis. But she actually, it's Kathy Love, so she proved that the stargazing, the neurological issue, was actually its own recessive gene, and she was able to breed it out. Now, there were instances in the 90s, and I do remember this when I was getting in a little more in depth in a hobby, that would be 98, 99, where people would say this animal's not a stargazer, this animal's not het for stargazing. But by 2005, 2006, it wasn't even talked about. People don't even think about Sun-Kissed being attached to stargazing. And as far as I know, it's not even in the hobby anymore. But yeah, that was proven to be literally a recessive trait, and that was done by Kathy Love. But if anybody was going to do the due diligence with a morph, was something like that. It'd be somebody like her. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
No, that's where
all of this is very interesting.
But I did like palmettos. I think they're cool looking snakes.
They're beautiful animals, man.
I'll take a snow, man. I'm sorry. When it comes to just a white corn, I gotta go with just a
I'm gonna ask this question. And I brought this up in our chat too. Are there any sex-linked morphs? Because I have our corn snakes at school. I can absolutely look at them and say, and these are line bred. This is literally my male Herschel to our female. We named her Hazel, and that's what like the tubs literally say H times H, so we know who it is. Right. But males are like pumpkin orange. Females are like that Miami phase brown gray. Yeah. And I can see it from like down the hallway. Tell you what it is. We probe the snakes. This one's a female. This one's a male. Okay. Like, I don't know if that's normal.
I think it's probably
I don't do the
more
thing.
common than we think it is. I don't think there's people paying attention enough to notice a trend one way or the other.
Where
for the most part, like
in
general.
For the most part,
I just made over 100 of them. So if people want to run with it.
So there's the old adage with snakes that the males are always prettier. This is definitely true in Pantherophis. In Pantherophis, you see that your males usually have a lighter, more vibrant phenotype. That's kind of just across the board. Your males are almost always prettier. And we say prettier because we anthropomorphize these things. But the lighter, the more contrast, right? We want to see contrast in our animals. Something about us as humans loves contrast. And I akin it back to us as humans looking at hair on a human, right? Like we have pale skin or dark skin, but our hair is always darker, right? And then something about the hair being lighter, we start getting gray hair. Humans think that contrast means you're older, you're weaker, you're not as breedable, and it's almost like an innate thing. Like get down to the uncanny valley. Why do we think these things? Why do we see
here, peasant?
But why do we see a man with gray hair and say he's weaker, right? He's older. Now this is not true because I know a lot of dudes with gray hair to whoop my ass, but there's this innate thing that happens. So we do that. We anthropomorphize animals. We think that things with higher contrast are prettier, right? We do the same thing with birds, but start looking at birds. The more colorful
they have
males,
secondary sexual character.
Yeah, but there's more
in different wavelengths of light than we do too. So that's where make a difference.
But start looking at how we view the hobby. The males are prettier. Why do we say the males are prettier? The males are prettier because they have more contrast. Why do they have more contrast? This could be just a sexually dimorphic situation, or it could be entirely more complex than that. I know that there's species of snakes out there. I believe ball python is one of them. That certain morphs only show up in males or only show up in females.
Okay.
But if you look at so we can take hypoerythristic corn snakes, which is going to be cinders. The males always have much deeper reds, much more palatable reds. You'll see a lot more cherry colors in the male cinders than you will see in a female cinder. But also, it's kind of weird with Cinder, which is kind of an anery type, hypoerythristic type morph, recessive trait. Also, you start plugging that into like hypo and other traits, start plugging it into albino, where we start taking out some of the melatonin. The males end up being a little bit more color saturated than the females. This akins itself over to like Mex-Mex. So in the Lamprepeltis mexicana complex, granites. Take a granite Mex-Mex. Find me a male ultra granite that's patternless. You won't. But your females will all be patternless, sometimes with beautiful cherry red heads. But the females always have much less color, much less patterning. John Lasser has told me before, I can look at a Mex-Mex and tell you whether it's male or female. And I was like, there's no way. And he's like, no, you can, because of the saturation of color, where the color saturates, the way the bands do it. And I was like, no,
that's what this is doing. That's what's really cool about it. So
and so if you have something in corn snakes that doing that, it's kind of interesting that you're noticing that, because it could be something as simple as hypotype A, right? The males are just a little bit lighter than the females, but they're all hypo, or maybe some of them are hypo. And I'm just picking a gene to express that in. This could also be an expressed heterozygous, right? So maybe those males are expressed. Everything's heterozygous for something, right? The whole clutch is heterozygous for something, but the males are expressing. They have the incomplete dominant kind of
het marker
ideology, the het marker, right? The het
markers, yep.
But the females don't show the het marker. But maybe if you breed those together, and that's obviously what you got to do. You got to breed them together.
Well, we did
see what comes out. So you bred the pretty males back to the females that were a little bit less.
Yep.
And so what'd you get?
Well, that's what all these babies are. So looking at the babies right now, they just look like baby corn snakes. But I also don't have an eye for morphs yet. So I mean, you guys, Sarah, could look at those things and be like, "Oh my god!" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just be like, "Corn snake." That's where I'm at right now.
And there's nothing to say that something that we haven't noticed before is now being noticed by you, and then now bringing those animals back together is going to show us what may come to fruition from it. So we don't in corn snakes. It's one of the biggest faults of this hobby in the corn snake world is we don't think about things more complex than simple recessive or codominant or incomplete dominant. We just say this corn snakes. We've been doing this for 50 years and we're done. But maybe we can get it. Maybe it's just maybe those males are just prettier. Maybe they don't show that gray hair. You know what I mean? And
they're dark to death.
Yeah. and I would wonder if you took a sample size, maybe your sample size is 20, 30. Maybe if you took a sample size of 1,000, there'd be a bell curve, right? But because we have a small sample size, maybe it looks so much more linear.
Well, what's interesting is that it is like they are all adults. All of the males have the similar phenotype. All the females have similar. There's no blending. It's literally like females gray, males red. Yeah. Reddish orange. But anyway,
and then when they breed back together, you get the exact same thing.
That's what we're about to find out. We've never really. These animals just got old enough this year to breed. So,
well, that's super exciting because I can't wait to hear the result from that.
Well, there you go. It was an unintended consequence of what we did. So,
well, I'm glad that somebody that's paying attention is looking at it, because what if it's the next step in the herpetoculture evolution, right?
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
There you
go.
Loughman morphin.
One of the motherfuckers going to come out patternless, right? Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do remember there was the picture you sent, I guess, of some of the adults a while back. And there was one in particular in there that really stood out.
Well, we still have it. It's there.
I need to hunt down that picture again.
Anyway,
show Chris, because it was like out of the bunch. It was like that one for whatever reason.
But
that one's different.
The refining of genes that we do with all of these in this hobby, all throughout this hobby, the selective breeding, right? Like selective breeding made, variable kings, Leonis, what they are, right? This is all of this is are they variable in the wild? Yes, they absolutely are. But look at what they are in this hobby, right? You're talking about animals that haven't been imported in the United States since 1984. I don't even know if that's the right date. Again, I make up my own science. Fuck you guys. but you
My
know,
timeline, and I'm sticking to it.
I
Yep.
can't be wrong if I say it on the internet. No,
There you are. You are right because it
But
was on the internet.
It was on the internet. It's true.
Yes.
But yeah, look at what we've done with a lot of these species. Chondros. You know, we take all these different localities, and then but when we start getting these designer morphs, look how we bred. And we're young in this, right? In the chondro hobby, Justin, you're more seasoned on that. In what 16 years, 14 years of people really breeding these animals, doing it well, doing it consistently. God, look at the selective breeding we've done with gargoyle geckos or lychees or any of this. It's just, you know, selective breeding will dictate its own phenotype. We have our own locality, and it's called designer, right? We can do this with every
my
animal.
room.
Oh yeah, your room.
I mean, you have a Dr. Loughman. You have your darker false water cobras.
Yep.
How many generations does it take to get a much darker animal, and you just keep going. You just keep going. This is how we get striped.
Lavenders.
Yeah. Well, lavender, I think, is something else. I
Lavenders
know
are just
his feathers.
Yes, lavenders are just albinos. That's all. Like we call them. They're just a simple recessive. That's it. I have one.
Is it actually albino, or is it Tyrannese positive albino?
It could be. Well, there you go. It's one of those Tyrannese deals. I have a lavender, and I'm basing my opinion of lavenders off of my lavender, but that may be the dumbest snake I've ever owned my entire life. Like it, and I have a lot of dumb snakes. But it's a mouser. It's the anti-false water cobra, and I'll be making those next year, I think. So we shall see.
But I'm too excited about it.
But you say albino, but I would be one of the people in the camps of disagreeing with that. It's not an albino. Well, it's not a Tyrannese positive albino. It's a hyping.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. But like you said, I don't know the morphs well enough. That was the hardest part about writing the book, by the way, is and I understand it because Russ Gurley was my editor, and he was like, okay, your natural history stuff's amazing, but people are going to buy this book to see pictures of albinos and lavenders and all this stuff. So we got to make the morph sections great. And I tried. I really, really tried. I tried real hard.
Is there an albino? Is there an albino false water cobra?
Well, no. Whatever the hell the lavender is as close to an albino as you can get.
But being simple recessive doesn't make it albino.
Yeah, it's probably a Tyrannase. It's definitely a Tyrannase mutation. We know that. Okay. We also know that every single lavender is a product of one or two animals. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Probably one. Yeah.
And they were in Italy in 2014, and then they basically, we have them all. And in Europe, they're doing a hell of a lot better job than we are over here because they're back crossing and adding. They're keeping track of who's breeding with who. Yeah. And they've got like quadruple hets and triple hets, and they have a hypo. We do not have a hypo. I will die on that hill. We have high yellow animals, but it's all line breeding. It's not an actual
line bred animals are not hypo. Line bred dark animals are not melanistic. We need to
there you go.
Be careful how we put nomenclature on these things. Sure.
That's why I say high yellow, high black, because I don't want to apply to me.
You start saying melanistic, and it's not really how it works. Yeah.
There you go. And if you say hypo, to me, that is hypo. Like that is a gene, and it doesn't matter where you get your hypos from. It has to come back to that, blah, blah, blah. And that's just
reduced black is not hypomelanistic. Hypomelanistic has a specific
there's a similar thing in chondros where it's like there's a high yellow line, which was originally done by Eugene Bissett, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah. And then there's just chondros that have high yellow, but they are not the same.
There are albino chondros.
Yeah, but
they don't do well, right? Like there's something about them that just
Marshall Mendez is the only one I know that has any currently and is actually actively trying to.
Was that proved as simple recessive?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you would assume that albinism is lack of melatonin, like it's melatonin.
I don't know what either. Melanin. I haven't been in the loop with what that with that whole thing, but I know he's been trying like hell for years to try and build upon it, but
I don't think they do that well as far as my super limited chondro brain, which is like
I know nothing about chondros.
They're great.
We have one.
Well, the first thing you need to know is they're awesome.
They're
Yes.
beautiful.
I like
amazing
them.
snakes. Yeah.
We have one
in
at school, and I know that I keep my chondro different than everybody else. It's in like this full, big, Jesus Christ, that thing's a 4 foot tall, 3 foot wide, 2 foot deep PVC closure, and it's got like a naturalistic background and sticks and pothos and the snake's like 20 or 30 years old. We got it from a zoo.
Wow.
But
feed
yeah,
it
no,
less, keep it colder, less humidity.
Yep.
Probably you do all those things, and he's great.
We have a cool mist humidifier.
Nice.
That we drilled a bulkhead into it, and it's on a timer. So twice a day, that thing gets drilled with humidity. It looks like a freaking cloud in there.
Nice.
And I was kind of afraid that was going to be bad because I listened to a lot of things about chondros, and I was like, we are doing everything wrong. Nothing is what we're supposed to be doing, and it's been with us for 3 years, and it seems to be doing fine.
If there's one thing I know about chondros, if it's doing well, do not change it.
Yeah, no, we have it.
Let it do
dialed
it.
in.
Let it do
If
it.
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
And chondros are very sensitive.
Yes.
So back on false
Okay,
water
gross.
cobras, and I kind of just want to
Yes.
ask this. I know we need to wrap this up.
Sure.
So scaleless false water cobras do exist.
Mhm. Yes, they do.
It kind of looks like they need to be oiled like my car, but
Mhm.
is that simple recessive? Is that
Don't
is
know
there a
yet.
micro scale in there? Don't know.
There's only been there's one pair. I think they are in Belgium, and that particular pair produced the animals that were all over the internet, social media, whatever, in 2021. And then that guy, he's a really cool guy. I communicated with him for the book. He produced another. He actually produced more this year from the same pair. So whatever that pair is producing them.
Whatever
right
it's
now,
doing, it's working. Yeah.
Yes, but we don't know anything beyond that because those animals aren't old enough to breed yet.
Yeah.
What
Takes
I
more
do
than
know
2 generations to figure it out. You got to keep going. Yeah.
is that it's kind of, I like it that I don't remember the guy's name, but he's doing it. It's kind of interesting because a lot of people would be like, "Oh my God, next new thing, I'm gonna power feed the shit out of these things, get them huge, and breed them again." And he is definitely as slow growing a falsie as you can.
I was gonna say, isn't that
like
kind of
growing
like,
them relatively slowly?
You're
They're
gonna
only
have
like
them ready in no time, regardless. Because
they're only 3 feet long, and it's not hard at all to get a false water cobra. I don't think you're even pushing it to somewhere between 4 and 6 feet is totally within the realm of possibility for those animals for normal. So these are actually on the smaller end of normal. What's been really fun to watch with the lavenders is falsies are a snake you cannot push to breeding. Like if you have to get them to 6 feet, and it seems like they need to be 3 years old. And I've kept track of a lot of people. And when the first set of lavenders came over to the States, it was in there's a shipment came over around 2015, 2016 of like 5 animals. And then another guy imported a bunch in 2018, 2019. And those animals hit, and that was like there were falsie keepers that wanted lavenders, and they loved lavenders, and I totally was one of them. And we weren't like pushing them; we were just treating them like any other falsie. And then there were definitely the get rich quick people who were like, "We're going to get these things to breeding size in a year." Because you can. It is totally within the realm of possibility to get a false.
You get that size. That doesn't mean they're going to breed.
But that doesn't mean they're going to breed. And there's been a lot of people that have been putting these things together over the past 3 years, and they'll get like 1 or 2. But in the States, the first set of like the first wave of lavenders come in have now reached sexual maturity at the right time, and this was the year that we started to really see lavenders hit the U.S. market. And I think there were probably around 20 that were made. And next year, they're going to be all over the place because I know a lot of people who have hets that are going to produce lavenders. They're from like my generation. Because I was on that second wave and I got my mail.
Is it a visual het or no? It's just
it is. I think that it is a visual het.
Okay, so maybe an incomplete dominant.
But it's kind of neat. Yes, I think it's an incomplete dominant. I actually like the hets more than the lavenders. They're
happens a lot of
really
times. Yeah.
cool lemon yellow color. It's not what we call a hypo in the States. It's this like cream butterscotch kind of color. I don't know how to explain it. But I have one of those hets here as well. But in Europe, they've made double hets and triple hets, and those animals have a unique phenotype. They look like they're made out of dark chocolate. They're not black. They're not brown. They're this like deep cocoa, brownish color. But all that stuff's being bred next year. So next year, false water cobras are going to like blow up. I mean, they've kind of blown up in the past couple years.
They absolutely have.
But the morphs aren't going to hit until next year.
I think false water cobras got a little popularity from Snake Discovery. Did a good job of talking about them, putting them into a good light, because I think they had a lot of negative.
They absolutely had negative kind of.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a species that is. I don't think it's a species that requires a bunch of negative thought. I think they're pretty.
When they are babies, they are absolute assholes. They are horrific.
So was I. Right.
Yes.
Like,
they just bite everything that moves, and then they get past that little baby shit phase, as I call it, and they get to be about like, once they hit 18 inches, they chill out. They still have the most ridiculous feeding response. I don't know if you can see this, but that was Jesus. There we go. That was from a yearling that lives in my office. I popped down the tub and looked this way, and then I was like, I am being eaten as my arm's being drug into the tank.
Sure.
So, but lots of snakes have that response. It's just that you have to work with them. They're not a snake that you can just have.
A little bit more brains.
I actually argue they're a really good pet snake because people want to like interact with something.
Yeah.
And you can train them. You can target train them. You can get them to shift train. They definitely know they're keepers. I will say that. And I don't think that's anthropomorphizing. Everybody smells different, and they just are able to do associations really well. So they know that food monkey is the food monkey, and that food monkey is not the food monkey, and that one smells like shit, and this one smells like this, and that's the one I'm going to hone in on. And that's what I think's going on. Because my office, they know what day they get fed. They're cruising on the day they get fed, and I come in the room, and about 20 seconds later, and they just like stop because they've picked up my scent, and they kind of orient slowly, and they move to the corner, and they just wait for me to open the.
So there's a few more crayons in the box. That's not a bad thing. So keeping it on corn snakes. Let's say we have hundreds of thousands of listeners now, and we're very proud of that. So let's say a corn snake breeder is listening to this podcast and is thinking, I want to get into something. Maybe not Pitiophis. Maybe I don't want to deal with the attitude. Maybe I don't want to deal with the spunk. I want to keep something that's going to be similar temperatures as a corn snake. I believe that hydrodynasties kind of like being in that 82 to 84, maybe even lower 80s. Would you suggest a false water cobra to somebody that wants to diversify their bonds? Wants to kind of So
there's just the only thing with false water cobras is that, and I will. They just can't be kept in racks as adults. And the reason why is they crap too much and they need water. Yeah. And they need a lot of water. Yeah. And you are just literally begging for fungal infections and respiratory infections if you're going to give them the type of water they need to soak in a tub environment.
So, I think this exact same thing is akin to northern pines, black pines. Yep. Now, I keep mine in racks, but my plan is to go to like FB90s, big tubs that are bigger than most fiberglass cages, 4 foot by 2 foot tubs. But you still have to be careful. You
could probably get away with falsies in that tub. That's the only tub environment that I feel like you could do. But even then,
tub, we're not talking about a tub that you bought at Walmart. We're talking about
But you're still going to have to punch that thing full of holes. Because when they crap, I've now kept big Pitiophis, I've kept Dremarkin, and I've kept Hydrodynastes, like the triad of terror when it comes to crap.
Yeah, poo-poos.
I can flat out say that the thing about the hydro poo is it's the volume, man. I mean,
is that a lot of poo-poo?
Yeah, I had a lot of poo-poo, and I was changing diapers, and my damn giant falsies shit more than my kid did when he was 3. Like it is.
Is it so?
So if you have a tub and you don't have airflow, you're going to be ammonia is going to hit, and that's the big issue. And they use every inch of space you give them. That's the other thing. They are definitely active.
I can't have hydrodynasties for two reasons. One, because it's absolutely illegal and I'll go to jail. The second reason is because I'm literally allergic to the world. There's another thing that we do.
A pumpkin, and it would be bad.
The whole other, there is the fact hydrodynasties are rear fang. They are venomous.
Yes.
If you get envenomated by a false water cobra, it is a foreign protein going into your body. It is not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
That doesn't mean that every bite is an envenomation, but it does mean that an envenomation can become serious.
Yes. You know when you've been bit by one of these guys, and it could be bad. And I'm not condoning free handling them or anything like that. And that gets kind of weird.
It's kind of a weird thing because they're kind of chill snakes when they come out.
They have the mechanical injury from the rear fang. You know when it's happening because we're talking about a snake that's head is literally the size of this mouse.
Yeah,
and the rear fangs are like a centimeter long. They're not like most epistoglyphs where it's like a little bit bigger. Yeah. And when you get hit by it, it slices and dices you. Like this. The cut right there, I thought, shit, like this is it. And that's the lower jaw. That's not even the top jaw. So it didn't get me with the fang. The fang was like out here, and I'm lucky. And that this is literally the worst bite I've ever had from one of them.
So you've never been envenomated?
Or anything. Not to my knowledge. That's not entirely true. I got bit one time by a baby. And what's really neat, I think it's neat. It's also unfortunate. Is that most of the envenomations, when I was doing all the research for the book, it seems like the big falsies, there were nowhere near as many reactions from the big falsie bites as there were the babies.
Okay.
Interesting. And you either don't react to the babies or you do. And that's just the way that it works. And I'm worrying about me, because I'm around these things all the time. I'm around their spit all the time. Hypersensitivity is a thing. So I'm doing my due diligence not to treat them like a corn snake and wrap around my head and do all that crap. Yeah. Because the reason why this happened, well, no, that wasn't the reason why this happened. Same snake today. I opened it up to get it had crapped one of its toddler dumps. Yeah. And I had the hook and I was tap training snake, and she was in her hide, and I tap trained her, and she just bam, came out, grabbed the hook, and drug it back into the damn cage. And eating the freaking hook. What the hell is happening? So I'm pulling, and she's pulling it back, and I'm pulling, and she's pulling it back, and she did envenomate the snot out of that hook. It was covered in spit and thick, goopy Duvernois stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I did get envenomated by this, but I just exposed myself to a tremendous load of proteins here from that damn snake spit. So that's the issue that you got to worry about. And I know that I'm not kidding myself. I will absolutely one day have a reaction to a bite. It's going to happen, and I try not to get bit as much as I can. I use hooks. I do all that. I don't do the free handling thing, but it's going to happen. But that's also because I have a dozen of them. I do not have I have probably. I mean, I'm not flexing or bragging, but I think between the house and school, I don't know how I don't have the largest number of them.
Because we probably do.
We have.
I would be shocked if you didn't.
And I have the facilities to keep them right. Yeah. That's the thing. Not everybody has a freaking science building. That's what you need to keep them right.
You need room. You need room. They need space.
But I have about 20 of them right now, I think.
Adults, breeding adults.
Breeding adults, I have 10-ish. Okay. And then I have about 5 juvies, and then I have 5 neonates. So
nice.
So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's also one of those things. Those envenomations can do one of two things. You can actually build a self-resiliency to the venom, or you can also produce an allergic reaction to it, which is what I've done with aspen. The more I work with aspen, the more allergic I get to aspen. The more I touch mice, the more allergic I am to mice. The more I touch my snakes without gloves on, the more life it doesn't like.
I see your pictures with the gloves, and I was like, man, Chris is on it. This is sterile technique at its greatest. Yeah. And now I've come to learn through our collective chat, it's because you don't want to die.
Yeah. I've sent pictures of my hands swollen up.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I'm like, okay.
I've literally opened up bags of aspen and then been laying in bed does Daddy need an inhaler? Right?
Yeah.
Like it's but yeah, I got the short end of the stick on that. I don't know, 6 foot tall and funny. Fuck it, right? Like I got some good things out of life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's anyways. I love that you talked about that. I don't necessarily think you've ever talked about that as far as like envenomation, the thoughts of envenomation, the worries of it. And a lot of people out here keeping corn snakes that are listening to our podcast want to diversify into a lot of different species. I think Hydranastes is an amazing species. I would love to keep. It is literally right up my alley. Does the shit stink? Yup. Does it eat like crazy? Yup. Does it fly out of the tub? Yeah, I love it. It hits. Does it need to be cooler rather than hotter? Yup. Like it checks all my boxes. But it's one of the things that me personally are going to avoid. But Dr. Loughman, if it came, if we kind of try to circle back around to corn snakes, is there any kind of last thoughts you would say?
Last thoughts?
Yeah, somebody interested in keeping corn snakes wants to get into breeding corn snakes. What's your thoughts? Where do you end up on that?
I think that they are more than a beginner snake, but a beginner snake at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've learned. Like I said at the very beginning, we're circling back to the circling back. When I got back into this, I thought for me to be legit, I've got to have like really rare, crazy, nutty, off the wall crap. And I've learned that's total crap, that you should just keep what you want to keep, because if you're keeping what you want to keep, you're going to keep it better because you want to keep it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're doing this because it's cool and trendy, then you start to realize they kind of suck. That animal is going to it's not going to live the best life it could live, because I don't care who you are, you're gonna crap out on it. So with the corn snakes, that's why I know that I will always have them. I would probably have more here at the house if we didn't have the regs, and I just don't want to deal with the regs.
Sure,
but
and that's even on
school.
Morphs?
We have them. What was that?
Like that's even on Morphs?
Yeah, I would probably.
I mean, like you could, like legally, Morphs are off limits.
We are absolutely. I'm saying we because I'm helping them. I think West Virginia is going to be a wonderful example of how the regs can be written the right way, because they're talking to somebody who's in this world. And that might have made me sound like an arrogant prick, but that's not what I was trying to get at. I have biologists coming to me literally saying, like, what is a morph? How would we be able to identify little Bobby's, corn snake and be able to say it didn't come from West Virginia? Those are I just had those conversations this week for pine snakes, eastern king snakes, and corn snakes. Because those three right now, DNR totally understands that there are captive bred phenotypes where the last thing a person that's doing this as a hobby wants to do is run out and catch some parasite-ridden snake and bring it into their collection and get the parasites in there. Like, they just want to know how to define them and all that kind of stuff. But more on that later. That's the main reason why I don't have more of them here. Now, I'm fortunate because I was able to grandfather in all the animals at the school. And like I said, I'm literally getting a corn snake tomorrow from the West Virginia DNR because it's some guy's retiring and he's had it for like 15 years. And I was like, I can add it to our bloodline. And our stuff was grandfathered in, and I have to write permits to breed the corn snakes because they're a native species in West Virginia. So like that's just a pain in the ass. But back to the original question, I think that they're also great for people to do advanced stuff with. Like, I would challenge anybody that has them. Just if you've got a huge collection that's in a rack, get a PVC enclosure and slap one in there and watch it. Yeah, because they are awesome to keep. Yeah, that way. And they're awesome to keep racks. I mean, we don't keep all of them. We keep the breeders for our research projects are definitely kept in is it VE70, whatever the hell is this, the Vision 70 tub? Yeah, that's what we have them in because they're a colony. We also have animals in the PVC enclosure. That's what I like about them. There's like total diversity. Yeah. You can pretty much do what you want with these things within reason and have a happy, healthy animal. So they're kind of the perfect snake.
They fit that. They fit that statement well. I truly do not believe they are the best for a snake, because I believe the best for a snake is the one that you've done the most research on and the one that you're ready to keep. And that could be a rough scale python. That could be a boelens, right? Or boelens. I think it's right. That could be your first snake. But I think if you're interested in snakes and you want to have something that's going to do well in a lot of environments, I think you're right. Also, if you have one snake, you have one corn snake, you got it in a tub. Maybe you're a leopard gecko breeder, and that's what you do. Put it in a display vivarium. I think you're going to be shocked at the interaction that you're going to get from that animal. I truly believe that across the board.
There was a research paper came out this year that, and when it came out, a lot of people were like, "That's crap." And then if you read the paper, it's not crap. But they were able to show, first time ever, this whole idea that snakes, it's not that they love their owners, that snakes are able to associate their owners with a positive interaction. And these corn snakes basically were more active and they were displaying predatory behavior in the presence of their keeper that they were not displaying in the absence of their keeper, because they had learned that the keeper equals mouse. And so I'm going to come out, and it was done objectively with a large, robust sample size. That is why I think they're a great pet snake. Awesome. That does not mean, though, that they love you and they want their snoot boop, because they don't.
Come on.
So, that there's more. There's some stuff going on there that's, but anyway, they're just wonderful animals, and I love that you guys do this podcast. By the way, this is great, because I do the other colubrid podcast, and I was like, what the hell? Where are the colubrids at? Now, within a year, we got 2 solid podcasts for them. So that's wonderful.
We appreciate the work that you do. You and Matt have put together, ensembled a great list of guests and a great list of topics. You guys also do a great job with just you and Matt. And I think anybody that's listening to this podcast, obviously the Herpetoculture Network, probably, I'm going to say this objectively, the best reptile podcast network that's out there. I just know that from being one of the smarter people on the planet, just because I'm a brainiac, right? I'm a brainiac.
Engineer.
I'm an engineered. But no, it's so wonderful that we're doing this. Zach, Justin, you guys are both older like me. I think me and Zach are closer to age than me and Justin. We didn't have this. We had radio. We had there was actually a really good Gecko podcast that was out in the early 2000s. This is, like I've said it before. I said it this exact same podcast. This is all free, right? Like, this is all free knowledge that people can absorb. That's what we do as humans. We absorb knowledge through different facets, whether it's forums, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube videos. A lot of the younger generation has found YouTube videos to be their go-to for absorbing things. That's why we all post all of these podcasts on YouTube also, right? Like, maybe you'll Google corn snake and you'll find this podcast. Maybe you'll Google gosh, look at that beautiful episode you did with the gentleman with the Russian rat snakes. Don't remember his name.
Kurt.
But Kurt Schultz, Kurt, I mean, what an episode. What an amazing story. What an amazing guy that's doing different than everybody else, right? And you'll
He has the snake version of the eel pit.
Yeah, it's badass.
Yes,
his
literally.
Closet with the Russian rat snakes.
Like, how cool is that?
It's the best. It's the coolest thing ever.
This part of my house, I'm just going to turn into an open enclosure for snakes. Like, that's just awesome.
I closed it off, and that's where I keep them, and it just changes temperatures, and it's good. It's like, and it's like, sometimes it's 90 degrees, sometimes it's 40 degrees, and they just do well. It's like, wait, what? But, as I said, we're doing this podcast on corn snakes. It's much more than corn snakes. It's much more than just talking about the Guttatus complex. But it's a love. It's a sharing of knowledge. It's sharing of love. And thank you so much for coming on, man. This is,
no worries.
Another great episode.
Coming on.
All of our episodes have been so good. We've had such great guests. We've had beginner keepers. We've had experienced keepers. We've had Sarah Moore, Joe Phelan. We've had these people that have data logged information for us for the last 10 years. And it's just special to have somebody like you on. We appreciate it.
Oh. Well, thank you for having me. I'll come on anytime you want me to.
Yeah, man.
This is fun. I enjoyed this. It's nice to be on this side instead of
it is, isn't it?
Keeping the
every now and then
going down the path.
Yeah. It's nice to be the passenger on the train, not the conductor.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I am the conductor almost all the time in my life. So I appreciate being the passenger anytime I can be a passenger. So thank you.
So Zach, let's say there's a listener that wants to find you or find out a little bit more about your school program. How are they going to do that?
Yeah. Best way is not to write me an email. Believe it or not, I get lost because I get 200 of those a day. Just simply find me on Instagram. It's Dr. Crawdad, because I do all this snake stuff in this public space, but I'm just as nerdy, if not more, with crayfish. So that's why it's Dr. Crawdad. And then on Facebook, it's Zac Loughman, and simply message IM DM. It's really funny. I've had some people message me, and I read the messages from the people that are reaching out to me, and I'm like, I think that they spent about 3 hours writing that message, because there's like bigger words than you normally would and all that kind of stuff. And I usually respond with like, yeah, that's effing great. You know what I mean? Like,
we're talking to a doctor.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to do that with me. Just chill. Because I try to be
He's
as
a
down to earth
normal
as
human
possible.
being.
Yes, I am.
What a concept.
I had to get the PhD because I was told to. So there you go.
I was able to communicate with you on my very low level of communication skills. So
Chris can do it. Anybody can.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
I probably will appreciate that much more, because my day job, I have to work in that academic sphere all the time, and it is so freaking exhausting. So
I have to work as a clinical project manager for engineering, and I don't want to talk to anybody like that when the business shuts down.
No, that's not fun. I don't want to do that. I'm a department chair, which means I'm not only in charge of all the students, but I'm also in charge of not in charge, but I am the person that oversees the faculty members, which means I'm in charge. Like, I have to talk to the professors about what's going on with their world, and it's just people management all the time. So I don't need the super professional speech. I want it. Don't worry about it. Just let's talk about snakes and nerd out. That's what I want to do. So there you go.
It's all of us. All of us. Any of us want to do.
Just be human. We all want to be human. We all share the same genetics. Justin, if anybody's trying to look for you, how do they find you?
First, you're going to go to blackboxcages.com.
Ooh. Man, blackboxcages.com. They make some badass stuff.
You want to email me, you can email bigeagle@blackboxcages.com. That is my email for Blackbox. Otherwise, Big Eagle.
B-I-G-E-A. Big. Oh, fuck, I don't know how to spell eagle. Fuck, I'm dumb.
Eagle, like eagle, large eagle, Big Eagle.
How do you spell eagle, Justin?
E-A-G-L-E.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Or you can find me at Palmetto Coast Exotics, or on the Herpetoculture Network, where you can find it anywhere podcasts are found.
There we go.
Yep.
Chris, where can they find you?
If you want to reach out to me, the best way to do it is through Badlands Herpetoculture on Instagram. And please bug me. I literally do nothing but yell at people all day long. So if you want to message me and talk about reptiles, I'm so excited. Anybody that has actually messaged me will confirm this. I will stop everything I'm doing, because all I do is yell at 130 people on a daily basis. And I'll just be like, I gotta go sit in my office and text somebody. So yeah, please, Badlands.
Go play with my Coleonyx.
Oh, Coleonyx!
Office Metratus.
Yo, Eublafarids, let me know when you're ready for the next podcast. We'll start a new one. Eublafarids, let's go.
Call it the Eublafaries podcast.
Ooh, Eublafaries. I'll be a Eublafairy. I'm ready.
I'm gonna make that a shirt.
Eublafairies. Oh goodness.
There you go. All righty. Go beans,
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks all. BlackBoxCages.com, SilentHillReptiles.com. Check them all out. We'll be back Monday for Snakes and Stogies, episode 138, Monday, 9 p.m. EST. No idea what we're doing yet, but do I ever? So, say yeah.
The last episode of Snakes and Stogies, go and listen to it. Wonderful episode.
I did listen to it. It tracks absent.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I was actually watching it on my TV while it was happening. So there you go.
Hell of an episode.
I'm trying to remember. Jesus Christ.
It was with Phil. It was about a
specific toxins or something.
Oh yeah, with Nathaniel. Yeah.
It was a great episode.
Attractaspis extravaganza.
There you go.
Oh, good lord. That's how I'm doing too many of these if I can't remember what I just did Monday night. So, thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Later, all.
Bye.